I'll have to say it again because I didn't have my microphone on. So, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is February 6th, and it is 6:03. Mrs. Martinez, are we doing a roll call? We already did. So I don't think we have anything to report out from closed session. So, Ms. Sari, would you like to lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mrs. Sari. So, oh, yes. So to our wonderful, have you noticed, look at our great portraits. These were done by fifth graders, and I don't remember Heather's last name. Higginbotham, in her art class. And aren't they fantastic? They're just fantastic. We love them, so we want to give a big shout out to those fifth graders who did such remarkable artwork, and to Heather Higginbotham for her wonderful art teaching. She just did a great job. So, approval of the agenda. Do I have a?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And we'll go on to student reports. So Victoria Blackman from Liberty, would you like to begin?
Good evening, President Grubbs, Superintendent Dr. Wright, and fellow trustees and cabinet members. Liberty High School will be busy this upcoming February. We are celebrating Black History Month. We will be honoring the many contributions and legacies of African Americans who helped shape our nation. In the following weeks, we'll be going to Solano Community College to learn more about CTE programs, a mountain bike excursion, and at the Golden Gate Park and holding a blood drive. Liberty has been partnering with UC Davis in their Spinning Salmon project this year. We've been provided an aquarium and salmon eggs for the past 2 months, and we've been monitoring their growth and collecting data. This project is to help support the depleting salmon populations. Next month, we'll be releasing our new hatchling into the Sacramento River. UC Davis has asked if they will be able to showcase our school and students in their upcoming research publications, highlighting student engagement with this project and our collaborations. Several students have been picked to be interviewed to talk about their experiences working alongside the researchers. We want to give a huge shout out to our science teacher, Ms. Sabano, for making this happen. Finally, we want to congratulate Mr. Lobo for being Liberty High School's Teacher of the Year, and Ms. Carcamo for being our Classified Personnel of the Year. We appreciate all that they do for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. And Bella Cannon?
Hello, President Grubbs and fellow council members. In the past few weeks, leadership has planned the first Clash of the Classes. It consisted of a Spirit Week where points were awarded to everyone who dressed up at Spirit Days. Every day at lunch, there was a different competition. Grades were able to nominate champions for each competition. There's a basketball competition, an art competition, a math competition, and a trivia competition. Points were awarded to the winners, and at the end of the week, we had our winter rally where more games and more competitions were allowed the grades to earn more points for their classes. At the end of the rally, the winner was announced, and the junior class had won. Also, during lunch in the past week, leadership was selling roses for students to buy for one another that will be delivered this Friday for Valentine's Day. This week, leadership is doing a 12 Days of Kindness challenge. Every day, a simple but kind task is posted that the students can choose whether or not they would like to accomplish. Today at lunch, the S Club hosted a teen dating violence awareness event, and this Friday at lunch, the Black Student Union are hosting a movie event for the start of Black History Month. Yesterday was the wrestling senior night, and tonight is the basketball senior night. Tomorrow, leadership will deliver the roses sold last week for Valentine's Day. And in the upcoming weeks, next week we have ski week and we will have a week off. Drama is continuing to work on their spring musical, which was announced to be the Addams Family. And leadership is continuing to plan events such as prom and the Panther Bowl. On behalf of Benicia High School, thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Very nice. And if you'd like, you're welcome to head on out to other activities. Thank you.
Or you can stay.
Or you can stay. And Dr. Wright, you're up.
All right, good evening. I would like to start my report off by congratulating our Employees of the Year, both classified and certificated. Our Classified Employee of the Year, Michelle Wade, from Mary Farmer Elementary School. Michelle Wade is a dedicated and highly respected member of the Mary Farmer community. She's known for her professionalism, her kindness, and ability to impact others around her. In her 5 years at the school, she has stepped into the role as an office manager, bringing organization and efficiency while maintaining a warm and welcoming environment for students, staff, and families. Michelle's leadership extends beyond daily responsibilities as she plays a key role in initiatives like the Giving Tree and Books and Blankets, strengthening community connections. Her exceptional communication skills and ability to multitask ensure smooth operations in a busy school environment, earning her admirations from colleagues. Michelle's contributions, including her work on the new online volunteer application process, highlight her commitment to continuous improvement and service to the BUSD community. So congratulations to Michelle Wade. We would also like to congratulate Mr. Jeffrey Boucher, teacher at Matthew Turner, your old roots, stomping grounds. As Benicia Unified School District's Teacher of the Year, Mr. Boucher exemplifies excellence through his dedication to student success, leadership, and literacy instruction, and commitment to professional growth. He's a trained Orton Gilliam practitioner and expert in differentiated instruction. Jeffrey has driven some of the highest achievement and growth scores in our district. His influence extends beyond his classroom, mentoring colleagues, piloting new curriculum, and contributing to district-wide professional development. His passion, expertise, and lasting impact make him a truly deserving candidate of this recognition. So congratulations to both Michelle Wade and Jeffrey Boucher. This week is also National School Counseling Week. Just want to express my gratitude for our school counselors. They do a great job. It's February 3rd through February 7th. This year, the theme is School Counseling, Helping Students Thrive, and this recognizes their profound impact that they have on student success and well-being. So thank you to our school counselors. We just celebrated Lunar New Year, and this year is the year of the snake. And the snake also represents the pursuit of love and happiness, as well as qualities and calmness and introspection. So happy Lunar New Year. February 11th, it is International Day of Women and Girls in Science, and we know that STEAM is one of our LCAP goals. Celebrated every February 11th, this event aims to increase diversity in STEM fields by empowering and celebrating females who are trailblazing their way through scientific research and innovation. And it's Black History Month, February. The 2025 Black History Month theme is African Americans and Labor. It focuses on the significant role that labor has played in shaping the Black experience throughout history. This meeting, I would like to honor Thurgood Marshall, who is an American civil rights lawyer and jurist who served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States from 1967 to 1991. He was also the Supreme Court's first African-American justice. We had an opportunity to also go to Robert Simple this morning. They had their wax museum, and the theme was Black History Month. It was awesome. I had an opportunity to learn a lot about Muhammad Ali and Michael Jackson and Tina Turner, and the students were amazing as usual. So it was a great event. So over the weekend, I was reflecting a lot. You know, it's been heavy. I was at a conference and talking with other superintendents and what's happening in their communities and their districts. I spent Saturday reflecting, and I just want to share some of my thoughts that I was thinking about. You know, I've said it many times that education is a great equalizer. I believe it's the answer, and I think deep in our hearts we all believe and we know that. Because educational is fundamental to everything that we do in life, it should always be at the forefront of our discussions. I might be a dreamer, but throughout my career I've always hoped that agendas surrounding public education would focus on inclusivity, not because it's mandated or politically correct, but because it's a genuine belief that all human beings, regardless of their physical appearance, country of origin, core beliefs, or sexual or gender identity, they deserve a free and appropriate education. Every student should have the opportunity to learn and grow and contribute to the betterment of this society. Inclusion and acceptance, fostered early on, profoundly shapes the path of our young scholars. I also reflected on my elementary school experience, and I saw a child who gravitated toward what was familiar, what I was exposed to, and where I felt included. I vividly remember that class activity where the teacher goes around the classroom and he asks each student what you want to do when you grow up. As my classmates eagerly shared their dreams of becoming doctors, lawyers, and engineers, I always had a response ready. I wanted to be a professional athlete. That was easy for me because I can turn on the TV and I saw Dr. J, I saw Ozzie Smith, I saw Charlie Joyner excelling. They looked like me, they were celebrated, but beyond the realm of sports, I rarely saw black educators, doctors, lawyers portrayed on television or in school. And the idea of a black president was unrealistic, not just for me, but I think at that time for most people. In my classroom, only one time did an African-American student answer that question with, "I want to be the President of the United States," when asked about their future aspirations. And that response provoked disruptive laughter and dismissive remarks. I witnessed it. I even participated in it. Joining in unison, "You can't be the president, you're black." And that was the norm. Looking back, I wonder, how much exclusion does a child have to experience before they stop dreaming big? How often do we need to see their potential dismissed before they internalize those limits? And still, how easily do they adopt the very behaviors that hold other people back? Even when it's unintended, exclusionary mindsets can alter the course of a child's future. And as educators, mentors, and leaders, we've got to be mindful of that. Our students are watching, they're listening, they're internalizing, and they're reacting. And we must make sure that their reaction is one of empowerment, not limitation, because those who seek inclusion but are denied entry often find another way to make their presence known. And too often, it's not in a way that uplifts them or society. So let's be intentional about fostering spaces where every child feels seen, valued, and encouraged to dream without limits. Their future and ours depends on it. As I think about public education, it's a cornerstone of our society. It's an institution that welcomes every child. We meet them where they are, and we provide not only knowledge and wisdom, but also social-emotional support, regardless of the challenges that they face. And every child carries some sort of trauma. In our schools, we serve as a refuge, a place of stability and growth. And around the world, people recognize that, and they risk everything for the opportunity that public education provides our kids here, opportunities that they may not have had for themselves. As a school district, our role is much like an emergency room physician, where we serve and honor and respect everyone that walks through the door. The conversations around public education today are deeply concerning me. I've never shied away from confrontation or feedback. In fact, I welcome it when the criticism's constructive, when it leads to learning and meaningful change and progress for students. But the irony is undeniable. When the very system that educated the leaders of this country, that paved the way for their success, is underfunded, undermined, and even threatened with dismantling, gives me pause. Public education has long been used as a political chess piece, and it continues to be today. And honestly, it's getting exhausting. For those outside the trenches of public education, we as educators understand the importance of maintaining a nonpartisan approach to our work. Our students' growth should never be influenced by a political party's agenda, regardless of our personal belief. Yet, despite our efforts to remain neutral, politics shape our work. And as the national and state debates grow louder, their impacts increasingly felt within the walls of 350 East K Street. Over the past 2.5 weeks, significant national discussions, including executive orders, have challenged BUSD's core values and operations. These developments have created uncertainty and fear amongst our students, families, and staff. While I wish I can eliminate that stress, I don't have that type of power. However, I want to reaffirm that in times like these, the strength lies in unity and support for one another, regardless of political perspectives. At its core, this is about the well-being of human beings, our students and families, and our community. This defines the us in BUSD. Last week, I attended a conference where Tony Thurman, our state superintendent, and key legislative representatives who support education shared insights into the national climate and its potential impact on the state of California. But unfortunately, there's still no clear answers, as many of these federal actions are unprecedented. California leaders believe that the several federal mandates lack legal standing and that they're actively challenging them at the highest levels. And while these legal battles unfold, the California Department of Education remains committed to advocating for students, protecting the department's role, and preserving the critical federal funding sources such as universal meals, Title I, and IDEA funding. The state continues to champion for equity and inclusion, ensuring that California's diverse student population is represented in educational materials. One of the most contentious topics under scrutiny remains immigration, which California leaders are prepared to challenge head-on. I've been asked both directly and indirectly about BUSD's stance on these issues and the protections we have in place for students and families. As a district, we're guided by our adopted vision, our mission, and our equity statement, which reflect our core values. A common theme runs through them if you read them. BUSD is an inclusive environment that welcomes and serves all. And in BUSD, all means all. To that end, we have a clear policy and regulation in place that prohibits district staff from requesting, reviewing, or collecting paperwork regarding a student's immigration status. There's also been questions regarding how the district would respond if federal law enforcement agencies attempted to gain entry onto BUSD's campus. And our stance remains clear. The district will do everything within our legal authority to protect our students and families. This includes ensuring that no entry is granted nor student records released without following proper legal protocols. We'll follow BUSD policy 5145.13. To date, we have not encountered such a situation. All district staff have been instructed to refer any immigration-related inquiries or federal agents directly to the superintendent's office. Additionally, we'll work closely with our local law enforcement agency to ensure proper jurisdiction is understood. And we'll consult with our legal team to safeguard our students' rights and safety. Last week, we shared a communication along with the link to our website where you can find resources on immigration. I encourage anyone with concerns to review these materials, and we'll continue to update that web page as developments arise. And I recognize within our community, amongst families, staff, stakeholders, there are diverse perspectives. It's not my role to share mine or to debate yours, but to remain focused on what matters, and that's supporting students. We're committed to minimizing disruptions by adhering to our governing board policies, upholding the LCAP priorities, where social emotional wellness, equity, and inclusion are central, and standing firmly on the foundation of our vision, our mission, and equity statement. These values guide us, and we embrace all students. So let's not exclude, let's include in BUSD. All means all, period. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. was very inspiring. So we are now going on to board reports. Does anyone have anything to report out?
I do. I have a couple of great announcements about students at our high school. The first one being the Benicia High School debate team returned to nationals this year. An extraordinary accomplishment by Cosette Calderon and Daniel Delgado finished second in the prestigious Berkeley High Invitational debate tournament. They were the top 2 of 74 teams that competed. The one thing that's really exciting about this all is that, Michelle Gaines is their advisor. But their guidance is also by past students who come back every year to help coach these kids. And to see that, I think, come to a fruition like that is pretty remarkable. So I just want to give a shout out to the Benicia alumni, Tristan Keene, Tim Knox, Garrett Slody, and anybody else that has helped our students get to this point. And I think there'll be more to follow at a later date. And the second thing, I got an email today from Andreas Kaiser about their students, their BHS teams who competed in the NorCal KidWind Championship this past weekend at Cal Maritime. Students designed and built an efficient wind turbine and presented it to the panel of judges. 11 students from his advanced engineering design class participated. I'm just going to announce their names because it's so exciting. Jamil Sela, Xavier Irvin, Sophia Bogard, Rusia Spirkin, and Logan Beta. Sorry if I messed up any of your names. I didn't mean to. But just congratulations and kudos to both these groups of kids.
Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I wanted to say a few things. First of all, I just want to thank Dr. Wright for your words. That was really great. Thank you. And I stand with you, so thank you for saying that. Also, the BMS debate team has started by a current BHS debate member, which is super exciting. So that's really great for the middle school. Yes, exactly. And then I just want to give a shout out to our high school improv group. I went and saw their performance in January, and it was really great. So just want to encourage people. It's a fun family night. They do give warnings when, the kiddos shouldn't come, but there were lots of kiddos in the audience, and it was a really fun evening. So shout out to our improv students. That's it.
I have a few things to share out. Trustee Maselli and I attended the SCSBA. I can never remember exactly how to say that. We attended their biannual meeting, and Stephanie Rice was kind to attend and be on a panel. And what that group is, it's a collection, it's all of the Solano County School Boards, and we all get together twice a year and have a presentation and a dinner. And Mrs. Rice presented on literacy, ELA, and how we're doing, and we talked about different strategies in all of the different counties, participated on a panel. Dr. Wright and Dr. Beatson were there as well. So thank you for attending that. I thought it was well done. I also attended the BHS open house after the last meeting, which was great. I had about a half an hour. And I ran in and met everybody, and I really enjoy how the students are all manning the tables. So if you go and learn about the different classes, you're talking to students, and you can hear about their experiences. So it was really helpful having a student in the high school who has already selected all of his classes without consulting me. So it's fine. It's fine. And then last but not least, I met with Amber Kelly from the Benicia Library. She just walked in, and just met with her about the library, had a tour of the library, learned about what the public library provides to our schools, learned about, needs, just the different needs of the different schools and how and how we are integrated with our public library. I didn't realize quite the extent of the interaction. I thought it was great. Also learned a lot about the different services the library provides our students that are free, such as it's tutoring and it's online, but it's a live person and it's available 24 hours. I know our principals put that in their newsletters, but I think it's great to broadcast that. So thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you. So this morning I attended the facilities meeting, the facilities committee meeting, and it was very interesting. It's, you know, there's so much going on, and thanks to our, tell me your name again, because Roxanne Egan. So Ms. Egan presented, and so some of the things that are happening, there are many new buildings going in. There's lots of renovation of bathrooms, thank goodness. Tech and security upgrades, ADA upgrades, sound. At the high school, the PAB is being renovated with upgraded sound and lighting. There are shade structures going up everywhere, which is greatly needed, as you probably know. Liberty High is getting new roofing, a new entrance, so that they look like the high school that they are. And all the schools are getting portable upgrades, TK classrooms, and different facility upgrades, thanks to the proposition that you all passed. So thank you very much for that. It was a really good meeting, and I really enjoyed learning everything that was going on. So thank you. Thank you. And then we come to number 10, and I'm going to read this. Let's see. All function of the board meeting, including public comments, will take place in person. Members of the public may address the board at a regular meeting on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Speaker cards are available at the entrance table. Please note the item that you wish to speak to and submit a card to the board secretary. The board president will call the open session general comments, government code, section 54954.3 during the public comment item. Comments for items on the agenda will be called during that specific item. Comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker, or the board may limit the total time to 20 minutes per item, with the timer displayed on the monitors. By law, no action may be taken on any item raised during public comment periods, and matters may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda of the governing board. Please be reminded to keep your comments respectful, as students may be watching the meeting. So thank you. And our first speaker is Mariana Moore.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Mariana Moore. I'm a longtime resident in Benicia. I have 2 girls at Mary Farmer. We love that school. I live in Area 2. I want to start by thanking you, Dr. Wright, for your statement. I'm actually very moved by it. I think there's so many districts right now across the country where the superintendent is either not allowed to express their values and their commitment in that way, or they don't hold those values. So I see you and I thank you and I'm with you. And I hope that everyone, I assume, on this board is with you as well. And I hope our community is as well. So I just want to start with that. What I want to speak to tonight, actually, you talked about in your comments, was protecting immigrants in our community. Because when we talk about inclusion, and we do all hold that value, you know, right now is the time to say, how does that really show up in action as well as words? And I have gone through your whole website piece around the immigration protections and what resources are available for families on the FAQ. I think it's really good information for the most part. I love that it's there. Again, I want to say thank you. It talks about things like the opportunity to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to fostering a safe and inclusive and equitable learning environment. You know, we don't know who's going to read that and go, oh, okay, I belong, because right now so many folks are being made to feel they do not belong. And also it talks about eliminating barriers, which I'm going to come back to in a little bit, but I'm glad to see that language there as well. And I looked at the FAQs, or the frequently asked questions. What are my rights? What if federal law enforcement comes to the campus? There's a protocol in place, all really good. The reason I wanted to come talk to you tonight, beyond thanking you for all of this, is to say I think there's some tweaks or refinements that can be made, and I think like we're all in learning mode, so this is not a criticism, actually, it's an invitation and an offer to collaborate. I know in my day job, working with immigrants quite a bit and with folks who work with them and for them and alongside them, for example, is one example, where it says collaborate with law enforcement. Any immigrant I know in the jurisdiction I work in would be like, oh my God, law enforcement, I gotta pull my kids out of school. And they, in fact, are pulling their kids out of school, which have horrific ramifications for learning loss, revenue loss, inequities that build over time, as you know. And so there's things like that where I think, I see the intent and I see the actuality of really good language, and that I would love to have, and I don't know whom, but you or someone on staff, you know, or a board committee, you have to familiarize me with the structure, work with you to just sort of collaborate on how can this be made, how can we be sure that the language we're saying with such great intent is in fact welcoming, inclusive, filling for families who are very, very scared right now. And I think that's something we can do collaboratively. I know that I was on a parent call last night. Am I done? Okay. Anyway, my address is on there. Look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you for your efforts.
And our next speaker is Cheer, help me with your last name. Chow. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for all you do. This is really a safe forum. Thank you, Dr. Wright. I really like your powerful speech. All is for all. Thank you. That means a lot. I'm here to comment regarding about the immigrant policy. First of all, I'm a mom of three, one sixth grader, one fifth grader, and one second grader. A very proud parent, very glad to be in, feel very fortunate to be in this district. I am an immigrant of 21 years in the US, being a citizen for 15 years. I'm speaking here today. Need to take multiple deep breaths because I want to be the voice. The voice for the people who dare not come here today because they're being labeled illegal. Deep breath. We can do it. You might not hear much concern because they don't have a voice. They cannot speak up. Any email, any phone call will expose them. That could be the reason you might not hear much. But there is still concern, even though there is silence. The concern still exists. I really appreciate on our website the FAQ area, because me as an ESL learner, just like many of the immigrants, English is a barrier, but the FAQ was so easy to follow, step by step, scenario by scenario. What happened? If this happened, what will we do? If this happened, what we will do? That is very heartwarming. I really wish we can have the similar message like tonight. All is for all. We will protect you. We will stand by you. And I really wish to hear that from the community in simple language where an ESL learner can understand, an immigrant can understand. Like Miriam mentioned earlier, when mentioning law enforcement partners, by default, an immigrant might not know the difference between a police officer and an immigrant officer. They represent the government, then they are the officer that might be able to take them away. So that is the angle from an immigrant, and that is my voice, try to be their voice and try to connect them with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And the rest of the speakers will speak during item 12. So, thank you for our speakers. So, we're at 11A, approval of the consent calendar. Background information on these items is provided to the board prior to the meeting. A common motion takes action without discussion on roll call votes unless discussion of items is requested by the board member. So, can I have a
I move that we approve the consent calendar as written.
second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to acknowledge some gifts, gift to the district. There was a flower arrangement estimated a retail value of $990 for the State of the District event from Michelle Young, owner of Daughters of Luna Floral Design. And those flower arrangements were so beautiful. They really added something to the state of the district. So we all want to thank you so much for that. And let's see. Presentations. So we are on to 12A, Linewize. So Bruce Lambert, our IT director, will introduce Adam Lee of Linewize.
Good evening, President Grubbs, board members, Dr. Wright, Cabinet. We've had discussion about internet safety and child well-being and teachers having access to help kids during class. We've reached out and we've looked around and we came across Linewize. Linewize is a program robust that's going to help us with student well-being, internet monitoring, and parents having access to help their students at home with access to the internet. So I will turn it over to Adam from Linewize, and he will give us more information.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Adam Lee. I'm with Linewize, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm lucky enough to do some board meetings, but I can tell that this community is obviously very engaged. And the only thing is I'd love to have a portrait next time if I do come back, because they're fabulous. But, thank you again for the opportunity, to present. Maybe, perfect. So as, Bruce had mentioned, Linewize is one of the leaders in child digital safety globally. We certainly, our mission statement, we could rewrite it. Dr. Wright, to be well-being, for all is at our core, as you said. We're headquartered in San Diego, and we're grateful to have the ability to protect over 1 million students, actually closer to 1.2 million students across just California alone, to keep them digitally safe and also to help inspire digital learning, within the classrooms. I'm going to skip this one. We're big believers. This is the slide that I wanted to spend some time on, and it's a little hard to see, but in an era of increased digital learning where students spend upwards of 60 to 70% of their time, on a device, it's imperative that the district adopts solutions to help break down some of the silos that have historically existed. I've been in web filtering in technology for 13 years now, and when I first started, it was all about IT departments had to keep the network up, and that was it. But if we learned anything during COVID, right, where we all had to figure things out and send students home, and you all lived this, not me, so kudos. All learning went digital. So all stakeholders need a say, need a voice, and I think if we look at, any district site, some of the mission statements, some of the core focuses, it's better data in, better data out. We want data to be that North Star that guides us so we can make decisions, that are routed in data, and that's what we do. So our marketing department put this together, and this is our student safety framework. It's divided into three pillars that I'll talk about, but what's important to note is the child's at the center. So we're a technology company, Every line of code that we create, every support ticket that we respond to, every training that we do for a district is all about keeping that child at the center, digitally safe, and helping to inspire that next generation learning experience. So the first pillar is prevention and intervention, and that is where our content filter and our classroom management platforms work together synergistically. Legally, school districts, in order to be E-rate eligible, you have to filter the internet. You have to make sure that students don't get to adult content and other dangerous or egregious things. So that's the baseline foundation that Linewize will bring. In addition, we offer classroom management. And what classroom management, that's the category of product. I like to call it more of classroom enablement, because it's not about restricting, but it's actually about allowing teachers and giving them more autonomy to be able to take digital control of their classroom. So when your web filter works synergistically with the classroom, we can give teachers the ability to actually locally unlock some things that might not be always open without ever jeopardizing compliance. So things that come to mind might be if we decide to open up generative AI, for example. We may not want students to have carte blanche access to it for distraction purposes, but we want to have a forward-leaning curriculum. We can give teachers that ability to open it up when needed, but also give teachers the ability to focus the students, minimize distractions, and also have great reporting data so they can have more effective meetings with parents. The second pillar is our early detection and intervention pillar. And our monitor product fits in there. There's historic, the levels of student safety issues, of self-harm issues, substance abuse issues are at historic levels right now, and they're only getting worse. So our monitoring product gives the district visibility into events that might not be identified because they live in a digital world. Students are head down, and it's hard to identify those things. So we'll talk about that. But the final pillar, our education and engagement area, that is all about this, right? It's about breaking down some of those silos that potentially exist digitally between the district and the community. So we include a parent app, so mom and dad can actually see what their children were doing on the school-issued device. We also host parent webinars where we have a team of clinical child psychologists and other thought leaders that will Cool, and I'll just hang on to it, thank you. So the first slide here is the Linewize filter. This is about maintaining SIPA compliance and making sure that students don't get places that they shouldn't. Need to address the board, okay. I've gone through these enough, but thank you so much. The next product that's part of our ecosystem is, and well, I will mention this. So part of our platform, we're actually using artificial intelligence to actually blur bad content on the fly. There's been issues, I'll bring up an issue that occurred last spring at Beverly Hills Unified. They were somewhat unfairly targeted and by the media because of their name, of course. But what was happening is students were finding different AI tools that allowed them to create bad content. And I'll use the word bad content, but it was adult content. And they were actually taking photos of their teachers using these AI generators and creating adult content of their teachers. It resulted in teachers quitting, the IT team, huge, huge issues. So what Linewize is doing Not only do we block bad websites, as you would expect based on reputations, we're using AI in the page to actually blur out bad images that may be created on the fly, anime, others, but also video content that might not be appropriate. So even though the district IT will go through great lengths to have different ways to filter YouTube, there's a lot of bad actors out there where what they'll do is they'll have a 5-minute video about a science lesson or something. At the 2 or 3 minute mark, they'll embed adult content. So it'll get through the YouTube filters. They have too much time on their hands. Our AI is smart enough to where it'll play the video up until that bad, we'll blur it. So it's an additional line of defense, and it's really helping to meet the modern threats that are ever evolving, especially as students spend more time digitally. The second product is for teachers. This is called ClassWise. And this is all about, again, teacher enablement. Teachers can be, at their lectern, at their desk, or walking around, but it allows them to see all of their students' screens and see what their students are doing. If a student is off task, they can message a student, they can redirect the student, they can actually create a focus where, hey, during this session, the only places I'd like you to be going is these 3 or 4 learning apps in your Google Drive. If you try to go anywhere else, you'll actually be blocked. So that really creates that curated learning environment that can drive the outcomes that you're looking for. And I also mentioned some of the autonomy that we can give by giving teachers the ability to unblock locally without ever jeopardizing compliance. So one of the challenges, I think, if there's any teachers in front of me or former teachers, you go to launch a website or an app to teach and it's not blocked. Now the lesson is derailed and you're scrambling. We can solve all those challenges without ever jeopardizing compliance. The third piece is Linewize Monitor. Linewize Monitor is the most advanced student safety monitoring platform. We again use artificial intelligence and natural language processing, and we monitor student activities across a couple of different event categories. Those include substance abuse. Unfortunately, in California, we're the #1 state for grooming incidents across students, sexual content, and self-harm and ideation. And if if our AI does identify any sort of issue, we have a team of highly trained moderators that will actually review and go through those false positives. So your team, those designated contacts, won't be bombarded with false positives. We do that work, on behalf of the district, and that's part of our service. These are the risks that we saw in 2023. I've got an updated slide that I just released. We just finished the data analysis for 2024. And I'm sad to say that although in 2023 we saw a child at serious risk every 3 minutes, in 2024 the updated slide is now every 1.5 minutes. So unfortunately, a lot of the pressures are getting harder, right? We know that it's never been harder to be a kid today. So you can see some of these stats, and the idea here is not to sort of sell on fear, but just to highlight some of the really serious issues that you are all obviously very well aware of. The iceberg effect, that's what I hinted at. When a child is heads down on a device all day long, it's much tougher than it was 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago when I was in school, where it was easy to identify a child who was, struggling, right? There were outward signs, but in this digital world, we call it the iceberg effect. Often below the waterline, that digital waterline, if you will, there's a lot occurring that just isn't seen. So conversations that should be brought to light, and the idea here is we want to identify more of the risks before they become real-life incidents. But when you're talking about a product like this, I think that what needs to be discussed is privacy, right? We're talking about student activities digitally. So Linewize is proud. We're the only solution in the student monitoring space that holds all 4 iKeep Safe certifications. We also have very deep ties with the site community in California. And we are on the CA NDPA, which is the most stringent data privacy agreement. We have to go through an audit every year to maintain that. So that's the most stringent data privacy agreement in the US. So we take data privacy very, very, very seriously. The idea is, or one of the big differences with us, There's a lot of student safety monitoring products out there, and they do a great job at monitoring emails. And that's great. If you're not monitoring, email right now, really a good place to start. But we find that over 40% of all the events that we raise, our moderation team raises, are occurring outside of just email. So if you're only looking at email, you're maybe missing some bullying that might be occurring in an esports approved game. Or maybe you're missing some misuse in generative AI, for example. So if you do plan on opening up ChatGPT and Gemini and others, you really ought to be monitoring it, right? To make sure that it's not being misused, that it's being used for good, and finding ways to celebrate, good uses of technology as opposed to, just, restricting. I'll wrap up here with our community platform. When I think about web filtering, the district is going to spend, X number of dollars no matter what because they have to when it comes to web filtering legally. The question should be, what do we get additionally? Do we have a tool, for our parents where they can actually see and even control the school district devices outside of school hours? Hey, it's great that you've given my child a Chromebook, but at 3 in the morning, I really don't appreciate them being on it. They should be able to set a bedtime, if they want to on that device. And with Linewize, you can. Additionally, if you're going to spend the money on a web filter, which you have to, are you getting some other resources like our community hub, which is that online resource? Our team will write, we just released a blog on TikTok, right? People are hearing a lot about TikTok. There's uncertainty. What does it mean? Should my child be using it? These are the kind of topics that we cover, and it's co-branded with your district logos and all that. And it's a really great bridge between the district, and the community. And then finally, we will do parent webinars if you'd like us. Too. And those are clinical psychologists and other great thought leaders, retired law enforcement, and other folks in the industry. The final piece I'll mention, as part of our mission to keep kids digitally safe, for every parent in the district, for every one of their children, we do provide a free license for our premium filtering software for a device that they own. Now, that data is totally segmented from the district. There's for FERPA and other reasons. But again, our goal is to keep as many children as digitally safe as we can. So if you have a child in the district, you are entitled to free filtering and security on a device that you issue your child. So after the holidays, you give them a new MacBook, iPhone, whatever it might be. We'll protect that just because it's the right thing to do. And this is just more information, on our community platform. This is Teodora Pavkovic. She is a clinical psychologist. She is one of our, she leads our team of experts. She's a 2-time TEDx speaker. She's fabulous. It's that quality or caliber, folks that would potentially be, speaking, with you at your request. So that is Linewize. I'll open up for any questions. Thank you. Thank you. You're so welcome.
All right, sorry, getting used to the mic here.
Me too.
So, does this program, does it block like social media? So is it up to district to decide? It can block social media accounts, it can block gaming, it can block gambling, it can block any sorts of things that can be done on a computer?
Totally up to the district, but yes.
Okay.
So we're a web filter, and what we do is we create a set of rules and policies, and that's going to be based on our work with the district, allowing what you want to allow, blocking what you don't. But we also have some SIPA compliant policies already thought out, so to get you to compliance that first day.
And you had mentioned sort of monitoring on your end in terms of the activity that's happening. Young people are so smart. I mean, they're so smart. They know how to do this. Is there monitoring in terms of if someone's trying to figure out getting out of the settings, trying to go around, if things that are not allowed on the Chromebook or computer?
These are great questions. So we call that circumvention or avoidance. Often children or kids will use proxies or VPNs or other obfuscation attempts or techniques. Linewize actively monitors, for those, and we will not only identify the students, but there's a setting that could be set where if a child tries to tamper with the device, tries to launch a VPN, et cetera, they get a custom page that pops up and says you've been identified as trying to get around the filter. You'll no longer have internet activity for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you decide. So it becomes more of a teachable moment as well.
Okay. And then you mentioned that parents are able to download this onto a non-BUSD issued computer. So if someone
Correct.
has a computer at their house, they're able to do that. Great. I have a couple other questions, but I'll let some of my other colleagues ask.
They were great, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you were saying, to kind of piggyback on my colleague here, when you were saying that parents can have access to a license to be able to use on a single device, if that parent has multiple children, does that mean they get a single device thing for every single child?
One per child in the
One per
district. yes.
child? Okay.
Yeah, so if you have 5 kids, you have 5 licenses, and then, there are packages if they wanted to kind of continue with that, but every child that they have gets a license, a premium license.
Okay. I had another question too, and I can't.
And that's
it
of our
just-
Custodio software is what it's called, and that was recently featured on the Today Show by name. Carson Daly actually was talking about Custodio. So you can go to custodio.com and check it out, and that's what every parent will get for each one of their kids.
And how is it that, we know kids have cell phones? Then they have their Chromebook,
Sure.
and they have a computer, and they can access it on their TV. I mean, all these different ways of accessing it.
Sure.
What is it, I mean, well, it only stops it on one item. So they'll have their phones here or at school, and they'll be able to access stuff anyway.
Well, that would be a little bit different. So, the way that we deploy, technically speaking, you hear a lot of talk about the cloud versus, not cloud. We're a hybrid solution. So we use the cloud, meaning that every device that Benicia Unifies issues to the students would have what's called an agent. So it's a piece of software that we put on that device before they're issued, and that means that wherever that device goes, home, school, anywhere in between, it is filtered, it is compliant, and all of that. But we also have an appliance that'll be in the data center. So anyone bringing any device that connects to the network here, that'll also be filtered and be compliant. Now, if a child brings on their cell phone personally and they're using their Verizon or T-Mobile and mom and dad haven't installed something, we'd have no way, to stop that, but that's also, a privacy thing as well. So if we don't own the device, we can't touch it, but if they're using your internet, no matter the device, it'll also be filtered and secured.
Then, sorry, you guys, I had a bunch of questions.
These are great.
Regarding teacher involvement. Our teachers are so overworked.
Yeah.
Incredibly overworked. And I want to know really, like you're saying, well, they could be around the room and looking at stuff, but they do that already. They do, mostly do that already. So how much is this going to take time off of their, put it on their plate, say, to have to do?
It's a great question, and what we don't want to be doing is taking teachers away from what they're supposed to be doing, which is teaching, right? But when you've got 25 to 30 devices, in front of you, and I might be here, I can't see that device.
So what are they looking at?
Yeah, so on their screen, so on their machine, or it's software based, they can actually put it on a smartboard.
Okay.
Or they can put it on a tablet, and as they're walking around. But also what we found is the most powerful aspect of the tool is not the technology itself. It's the fact that the students know the technology exists, right? So that can, after just one session, they get the first note from the teacher that says, "Hey, can you please get back on task? We're on IXL. Get off.
Right.
All of a sudden, okay, this is different." But we don't want to turn teachers into dashboard managers. That's not what this is about. But what it does is it also has some historical reports. So if I'm walking around and I think I might have seen something, but the student clicked out of it, normally that's sort of gone. Or maybe they can call IT and try to, I think I saw something, but IT they're as busy as teachers are too. They've got to keep the network up, and now a teacher can go back back in time and say, and they have up to 2 weeks to do this. They can say, oh, between this 10-minute block, I just want to see what they were up to. They can actually see the screenshots. So if there was some misuse, or it shouldn't be viewed as just a slap on the hand. It's also, you can share screens. So pretend I see a student approaching a math problem in a really cool way. I can actually screencast their screen onto the smartboard. Hey, everyone, look how XYZ student just approached this problem. This is really cool, right? So it should be about celebrating, those successes too. And I think it really is an efficiency multiplier, for the teachers when used properly. And we include full-blown training. So we'll do training, Q&As. We have asynchronous and also, group type training. So we'll make sure that it's used the right way.
And then finally, when you say parents can get notified from them, a student using a home device to obtain information that they shouldn't be looking at, and if the student is up, you use, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning or something, they're up in the middle of the night, how is that parent notified? Is it going to send them a text and say your student is because I don't know if.
So that's a very complex question. Okay. And just to clarify, if our safety monitoring product did identify a student, at risk, it's not going to be alerting parents directly. And the reason for that is there's been a lot of situations where there might be an issue at home that's actually prompting the child they know their devices are being monitored. So we've had issues where they've actually written emails and not sent the emails talking about abuse and other issues. So that would make that situation worse, right? So what parents can do is they can use the app, and they can actually see what their kids are doing on the devices, what websites they went to, the videos they watched, those kind of things. But from a safety monitoring perspective, we don't send the alerts to parents, for those reasons. And there's also some other communities where, in California, right, it's illegal to, out a child, for example. And that's where it gets very complex.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for the questions.
I have a question just about cost. The program sounds fabulous with a lot of features. And you mentioned a couple times we already have to pay for something. And so I'm curious as to how much more this might cost than what we're currently paying. I don't know if we've done that analysis yet. I know this is just a presentation, but I just wanted to raise it because we have, agenda items tonight about budget. So.
No, and I do, these meetings often. I was just in Texas, I had a keynote at their big TCEA conference. They had 800 sessions there, and I think 400 were about AI and what to do about it, and the other 400 were about how do we pay for anything. They're tough times. We are very, very competitively priced. I can't speak to your former what you had paid, but we can happily kind of participate in this cost analysis and help in any way we can.
On that note,
Yes.
I'm assuming there's a base cost, and then does that also then you can upgrade from there in terms of maybe extra safekeepings or extra amenities that were in your presentation? Is that accurate?
It is accurate. So think of the solution again, sort of those 3 pillars. The first web filtering would be your license, number 1. The classroom management or enablement for teachers, license number 2, and the safety monitoring would be number 3. If you buy any of our products, you are still entitled to the parent app and all the digital education. We don't charge for any of the community stuff.
And then there would be an annual fee or an annual update?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
So I have a question about the, going through your presentation before we came in tonight, there are certain apps that could and would be blocked. One of them was YouTube, there were a couple others. So in the classroom, we are digital. There are times when teachers need to show a YouTube video or a video from another app. So what happens then? Because if we have blocked something like YouTube for individual devices, what happens if that teacher needs to show this particular video?
Yeah, it's a great question. And with the classroom management product, Classwize, teachers would actually be able to unblock, YouTube. But we approach YouTube in a number of different ways, right? So we're the ones that would be doing the blocking too. So we're the blockers and the openers, if that makes sense, in your scenario. But there's a couple things we can do around YouTube. One would be allowing teachers to actually push a video in what we call clean YouTube mode, where there's no thumbnails, no comments, all of that's gone. So the
No
comments,
ads.
yeah, no ads, but if you've read comments on YouTube, they're absolutely vicious. So it's a cleaner YouTube experience that we can deliver. And you can actually, as a teacher, you could push one YouTube video and say, we're focusing on this video. They would only be allowed to see that video, for example. If they tried to go to another video, they can't. So we want to allow more of the good and only block the bad. Like, that is the future that we're, historically, when I think about my career at filtering for the last 13 years, it was very heavy-handed blocking, and web filtering. Now, in today's digital world, it's how do we enable more and more, and that's really our stance.
How difficult would it be for a teacher to unblock a video?
3 clicks.
3 clicks?
3 clicks, yeah. And, frankly, I've worked for Linewize for 7 years now. We used to approach teacher training with a very thorough training up front, and then we would do, a Q&A. And we found about 10 minutes into the hour-long training, all the teachers are flying. We're seeing their eyes on the screen. They're just going, they're clicking. So now it's really intuitive. So what we do now is we recommend, let's get all your teachers using it, and then a week later, just do a Q&A session. And then for those, because they've been running with it. And then we'll offer for anyone that would like some extra, training, hey, we'll do 2 or 3, we'll schedule them after hours, and they could join if they want to kind of go deeper. But they really do take to it very, very quickly. And once they see or hear about one teacher, hey, have you tried the Classwize thing? Here's what I did. They'll very all quickly, use it. So it's fun to see that usage really increase.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have more questions. So just to piggyback on what Trustee Hirsch said, with a district of our size, we've heard possibly $40,000 would be the cost. What's the range of the cost for a program like this?
Range in
Cost. Like, what would we be paying, maybe
so
annually?
per student cost? Or,
Sure.
$40,000 would be the annual cost. So that's a reoccurring cost. So
Okay.
we license based on student count. So we include, filtering and safety for all devices. The community is all included. BYOD, so the bring your own devices, all that's included. So we just license based on your student count. And there's an approximate cost. I think there's 3 licenses that we had licensed for the filter, the classroom, and the monitor product. And we have that broken down as separate line items.
Okay.
And then we did apply a bundle discount, for you to make it more palatable.
And you don't have those numbers? In terms of what, would it be $100,000 to implement it? What is the cost of what?
Oh,
it could
there's
be?
no implementation costs. That is your total cost. We include all onboarding, training. There's no professional services. All of that is included in that cost.
Okay.
So there is not a penny extra. We'll never come back to you for anything. And then we'll also future-proof you from increases. We've all, maybe took that cable bundle and said yes to the phone when he really didn't need it, and he got the cheaper price for cable TV and internet, and then the next year was 3 times as expensive. We'll never increase year-over-year renewals beyond 5%, right, just for inflationary purposes, so you're very much price protected.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This might be a district question, but I have questions just in terms of, and maybe this waits until it's more presented formally, but I have questions in terms of how will the district monitor, and how will we share this with our parents? When does it come to a point when a student is continuously going beyond restrictions? And also thinking about, there's different needs for our elementary schools, our middle school, and our high schools, particularly through technology, but also classroom use, et cetera. And how would we, push that forward and use that? So I don't know if that's a further presentation, but.
Yeah, I think we would respond to that if we were to move forward and go down the line. We would share our plan.
Great,
Yeah, and I think it's having the data, that we can, provide to help you shape those policies. And, while we're not there to make those decisions, we do have those resources. We partner with 125 districts, in California. We can also share some successes, potholes to avoid. That's all, part of the customer success experience that we offer.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And this may be more of a district question too, but as part of the analysis of next steps, I think it'd be great to get our staff's input as well to make sure it's doable. I mean, I don't know, I've heard mixed things about, I think we've had a different service at least one of our schools. And I know I've heard some real mixed things from staff on that, so I don't know. I think it'd be a good thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Appreciate your being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all for the
much.
time. Appreciate you all. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Kashana, you turned in a comment card, but we had already been past comment. Would you like to comment now, or would you like to comment at another item? Tell me your preference. Okay. And if I forget, will you, just let me know. Okay. So we are on to 12B, LCAP mid-year update. Dr. Beats?
Yes, good evening. Part of the requirements of the LCAP process is to bring to you a mid-year update. So I'm going to do that now. I need to. We're going to wait.
Because I have a different thing on my screen that's showing on the monitor.
Okay, so as I was saying, part of the process is to bring you a mid-year update, and the purpose of that is to really talk about implementation and effectiveness so far this year. Just to remind you, the LCAP has many different points, so we have to engage educational partners, we have to monitor our metrics and indicators, we have goals, actions, and services that we need to implement, and we have to keep track of our budget. As you know, we have 4 LCAP goals. Goal 1 and 4 are around social, emotional wellness and belonging and equity, and our 2 middle goals, goals 2 and 3, are our academic-focused goals. The next 2 slides are, and I'm going to go through this relatively fast because we've talked about the LCAP a lot, but I'm happy to stop at any point. The next 2 slides are just a reminder of the actions and services that live inside of each of our LCAP goals, and the items in blue are the items that are paid with one-time funded dollars. I won't read all of these to you. Did you have any questions about the actions and services? Okay. So the next series of 4 slides are a screenshot of how we monitor our progress on every single action and service. And so in the LCAP, we have what I call the large rock data points. So that's our CASP scores, our suspension rates, all of that, bless you. But additionally, our LCAP team has identified micro pieces of data to really monitor not the goal as a whole, but the implementation of each action. And so the big rock data points really monitor how are we doing collectively on that goal with all of the actions and services, and these data points really are focusing on more individual actions, if that makes sense. And so this is just a screenshot to show you that between ed services, student services, and special education, we really monitor all of these different components in a variety of ways. And I'm happy to bring back to you any of the more in-depth data on any of these if you would like.
Assume that the supplemental part is if it comes from the supplemental grant.
Exactly.
funding source.
Yes,
Okay,
so the spreadsheet I have on this has a lot more information on it, but so when it says yes under supplemental, that is paid with that supplemental dollars.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so, of course, in goal 2 and 3, those are our academic goals. A lot of the actions and services are monitored both by looking at our CASP data, which is our sort of our summative data. It comes once a year after that year is ended. But we also have NWEA, which we know is a real predictor of how we do on CASP. And so what I would like to do is just take a couple of slides to show you I'm going to go in deeper with that data point. And so on the left grid is last year's. So the NWEA we gave in the fall of 2023. And basically the way this works is it gives us an achievement goal, of course, and a growth goal, but it also tells us if we stay on this trajectory, we predict that each of those grade levels would score about that range on the CASP test when they take it in the spring. Okay, so if you look at grade 3, if we stayed in that trajectory, NWEA was predicting we'd be at about 52% meets and exceeds when we take CASP. And then on the right-hand column, you can see what we actually did on CASP. And so in most areas, we are doing better than what NWEA predicted. A couple areas we didn't do quite as well. Over on the right side, you can see that same projection based on our fall data. And then we also pulled it again in our winter. We just finished giving the winter NWEA monitoring, so you can see that we have some, if we stay on the same trajectory, where we would expect to be with CASP, and this is for our reading ELA, okay? And then the next slide is just a snapshot of our ELA growth and achievement. So the top band is growth, and you can see the distribution, because remember, NWEA shows how did we do from test point to test point, and then it also shows achievement level. And so the bottom band is our achievement, which is, we're in around the 53rd, which is where we've been with CASP, right around that 50th percentile for growth and achievement here. So we definitely want to keep working on that. This is another way to look at that data. So this is our growth data, and you've seen this slide in previous presentations. That triangle is what our target growth was for each grade level, and the blue band shows did we meet that target. And so in almost every grade level in ELA, we have met that target. We have a couple areas we're going to continue to look into. Whoops, there we go. Hit the wrong button. And then the same for math. And as has been historical in this district, we perform better in math than we have been doing in reading. And so again, on the left side was last fall's, the 2023 projection. And then you can see how we actually did on the test in May. And then the right-hand chart really talks about this year's projections based on NWEA, where we may be with CASP, should nothing change. And then again, our growth band on the top and our achievement on the bottom. And one of the things I wanted to shout out and point out is in math, we're at the 68th percentile for growth, so that's pretty good. And then achievement, you can see that left bar, we were at the 58th percentile for achievement in math in the fall administration, and we bumped up to 65th percentile. So those are the kinds of gains that we're looking to make. And our teachers are doing a great job really working on all of these components with the different curricular pieces that we have that attach to this. And again, here's just another way to look at our growth data. Yes, sir.
NWEA, is it, you do the fall, winter,
And spring, yes.
and is it the same test for the grade level? So if it was, theoretically, you'd have the hardest time in the fall and you'd get better as you went through more of the curriculum?
The test, just like on CASP, adjusts. As you do better, it'll adjust the question, so it moves as they go.
If I'm a fourth grader taking the math, let's say, when I take it in the fall, is it fourth grade math, which I've not had hardly any of? So theoretically, unless I had some knowledge outside of it, I might not do as well, but then in the spring, after having had 2/3 or 3/4 of the curriculum, I would think I would score much better, or am I off?
That's a great question. I'm going to actually toss it over to Ms. Rice. Do you want to comment on that? She's my NWEA expert.
So good question. If you're a fourth grader, you do start out with fourth grade material questions. But again, depending on how you answer, whether you're getting them correct, it's going to continually raise the bar for you, or if you're missing it, it's going to scaffold down. So when we see our scores on NWEA, it's in comparison to the mean of the national average, or it actually goes outside of the United States now. So they give a score, which is RIT, so it's that scale score, which gives you a comparison of where you are in regard to your grade level, but it really gives us a lot of data as far as breaking down the standards and where the kids are ready to learn. So it scaffolds more than CASP does.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She can tell that much more eloquently than I can. So again, in math, you can see that every single grade level hit their growth target, and so
Awesome.
that is awesome.
That's amazing.
And so that's just a kind of a deeper dive into one of the areas of progress monitoring that we do around the different actions in the LCAP. Just the rest of the information that I'll go through quickly is just the implementation of all the actions. So partially implemented some parent series. So we haven't done as full one as we've done in previous years, but we have had a couple of parent series, and I know that we have another one coming up. College and career counselor is one of the actions in the LCAP, and that has been a position that has remained primarily unfilled this year. So we have filled it in with some contractors throughout, but it hasn't really been the way that it was intended. And data and assessment to drive instruction, again, that is a work in progress. So our staff are looking at data constantly, setting goals, doing all that great work, but we're not fully implemented in that. Grading for equity and conferences, we have paused this year. It was, we've been dabbling in looking at grading at the secondary level with small pockets of teachers, and we did not just, honestly, we didn't have the capacity to really launch it off well, and so we just decided to take a pause at this moment in time. The rest are being fully implemented, and we are on track for all the budgeted items.
At the grading for equity, I think, you know, it'd be good to let people know what that really is. You know, there's a lot of, it's a hot button issue.
Yes, it is, and there's a lot
teacher,
of different ways to look
It's a
at.
hot button issue that a lot of people, especially old timers, don't like.
Yep. Absolutely. It's a very complex topic, and we started dabbling with people that are trying out different things, but it was, with everything else we had going on, we weren't doing it justice the way we were trying.
And that's something you want to do justice. It's like, when you talk about, God, what's a restorative justice? If you don't do it right, you kill it. You kill anybody's desire to do it because it comes out, people already are on edge, and then if it doesn't come out right, then it goes bad fast. Experience.
Maybe you could give us the short and sweet. Just explain grading for equity, just real quick.
Is there a short and sweet?
I know, there is no short and
There's
sweet,
not a
but
short and
you can
sweet.
try.
I will be happy to. And so it really looks at a lot of different angles for grading, and it talks about the scale. So, one of the ways to look at it is we grade on a 0 to 100 scale, typically traditional grading scale, and a B to an A is 10 points, a C to a B is 10 points, but an F is a 0 to a 59.
Yeah.
So that's one piece right off the top, is just mathematically the scale is skewed. So it takes, you can fail 5 times more than you can get an A, if that makes sense, because there's 50, almost 60 points there. So that's one piece. Another piece of grading for equity may be linking it to standards and progressions, and what does that look like? Another piece may be having conversations around retakes and redos when you give tests. Another piece can be around looking at what the weight is. How much weight do you give a test versus homework versus classwork? All of those things. And really trying to come up with a system that is equitable for all students. Because what we know, and I think is probably fair to say, that while we have some policy around some of that, class to class, subject to subject, it varies greatly with how things are done in terms of what things are weighted, who allows you to do something again versus not. So there's a lot of differences there. So that's a very nutshell.
Theoretically, in a geometry, if you have 3 geometry teachers, let's say, the grading system should be the same across, and what they cover in the weights should be the same, and it's not always the case. So like if you move from one class to another, you know, it should be seamless, but
Yeah.
it not always is.
And that's more fair too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
some kids get in one class and. Yeah, yeah.
So we're having the conversations, but in terms of an initiative, we've just paused because when we do it, as you said, Trustee Maselli, we want to do it the right way and really engage people in the conversation.
The grading scale, President Grubbs, is, the grading scale is the one that really, if you get a room of teachers together, will get things going. I mean, if you think about it, like you said, 0 to 59 is, I mean, if you went on a rubric scale, like a 1 to 5, where each thing had an equal amount, 20% at each band, that would make, but, you know, I'll say I was guilty for a long time going, hey, when I was in school, it was 0 to 59, just don't fail, you know, and you got to get people out of that mindset, because it's a hard ask, because a lot of people, when I went to school, it was this way and it was good enough for me, so why are you changing it now, you know, and there's that concept that people think that you're lowering the standards, and you're making it easier, you're not holding kids accountable, which isn't true. But it's something that a lot of people think. I mean, I've been there. Oh, my wife and I go rounds on this, because she's a real proponent of it, and I never have been. Not saying that she's wrong, but I get it. It's
Not in public, anyway.
not in public. I'm not going to say she's wrong.
I think she shifted a little. I think she shifted you a little bit, but from what I'm hearing.
I get it a little bit more.
Absolutely. And the last part of just wrapping this up is kind of the next step. So we are continuing to look at data. We have a little bit more surveying to do. We'll analyze that feedback, and then we'll bring to you a draft of the LCAP in, I think it's June this year, for a public hearing, and then we'll bring it back for adoption. Any questions?
You know, there was one question I neglected to ask when you were on the slide, and you even asked for questions. On the actions and services, the ones that are highlighted as being used in one-time funds, you're just showing us what's one-time funds. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be around.
No, that's the way I just like people to see that there's just different funding sources.
Okay.
That's helpful. Okay, Dr. Beeson, you are up again for 12C, data accountability.
Exactly, thank you. So one of the things that we know is that our California dashboard, I did a presentation on that, I think at our last board meeting, or it was the one before, which has all of the different state priorities from academic to suspension, chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, all of those. That's our accountability, and it's both a state accountability and a federal accountability. And so I wanted to just briefly kind of talk with you about the 2 different accountability systems and let you know where we are with that here as a district. And so our state accountability process is called differentiated assistance, and that is based on our performance on the California dashboard. Basically, one student group has a red indicator over 2 different indicators. And so so you might have a student group that's in red for math and ELA. Or, I'm sorry, math ELA counts as one, and then maybe chronic absenteeism, okay? And so they're going to say, what do we need to do about this particular student group? The federal accountability is called, there's three levels. One is CSI, which I didn't put on this because we don't have anybody in CSI this year. That's comprehensive school improvement. And that's kind of the highest level. Then there's a mid-level, and that's ATSI, which is additional targeted support and improvement. And then there's the kind of entry level, which is just plain old TSI, which is targeted support and intervention. And that's required by the Every Student Succeeds Act, federal law. And this one is a little bit different. So it's accountabilities based on an underperforming student group. So it's, again, it uses the California dashboard. 2 years, but the it can be different indicators, or so it doesn't have to be the same indicator, but the student group has to be in red for 2 years. And then there's a 3-year cycle where they make the determination, but you can exit once we meet all the criteria. So once our student groups move out of that red, we should be exited. We do have to have a plan. We have to call out all of that within the LCAP, so it's all linked to that as well. And there's some compliance monitoring. Our county is the one that implements the federal regulation as well.
How many people do you need in a group to be a student group that you count? I mean, obviously, if you have one person, I doubt they would count.
I believe it's I had that on the last presentation. I think it's 30 is the student group to get a color. 30 students. It's either 20 or 30, and I'd
I
have
would think it would be maybe a percentage of how many kids you have. No, it's a certain amount.
Can you ask your question? Maybe I misunderstood your question.
Well, no, like if you have 1 or 2 kids, but then I was thinking, if there's a certain number, 30 kids would be statistically significant in a district of 1,000 kids versus a district of 20,000 kids. So I was wondering if maybe there was a percentage thing as opposed
No,
to a number.
until you get, I don't know what the calculation is behind it, but in order to get a color on the dashboard, there has to be 30 students.
Okay, thank you.
At least 30 students in that group.
Thank you.
So we are in differentiated assistance this year. I actually shared that with you last time. It is for our students in special education for their academics, so ELA and math counts as one, and then college and career readiness, and I shared that last time. So what does that mean? That means that we're working with our county office, we're doing some data digs with them, with all of our administrators, we're brainstorming some next steps on things that we can do. They will come here and help support us in any way that we need. Through training, professional development, looking at data, program implementation, and so forth. You can see over on the right where that student group performed. So it was 88 points below what they said standard was in ELA and 96 points below in math. And only 4.3% of our students in special education were college and career ready. And just to be fair, that indicator dipped quite a bit this year. And so I'm working with the high school to really unpack the why behind that.
Okay.
We are also we have 2 schools. The other thing I want to just note is a differentiated assistance is at the district level, and then CSI, TSI, ATSI is at the school site level. So Benicia High School is in ATSI for suspensions of African American students, and Matthew Turner is in TSI for suspensions for socioeconomically disadvantaged students, for suspensions and their chronic absenteeism, okay? And so same type of process, we get notified, I'm required to notify the sites. They have to include this information in their single plans for student achievement. So when that comes to you this spring, you're going to see some of that information. We have to use evidence-based strategies. We have to identify if there are inequities. And then we get monitored by the county office. And one of the ways they monitor, I believe, and I haven't received official notice of this, but they do Williams compliance walks, which is when they walk around to make sure that all students have textbooks and so forth. And so that's how we performed on those 2 accountability measures. And so our next steps is just, some of the things that we've already started doing is our partnership with Inclusive Strategies. We're working with Supporting Inclusive Practices, which is a grant-funded organization that has come and done some work with our administrators already. We are working with our special education teachers and classes, making sure that they have the core curriculum and they have training in that. We haven't done this yet, but we will be reviewing our courses at the high school to make sure that, and when I say tagging in CalPads, that is one of the ways that we keep track of what all the classes are, and that's what gets sent to the state and UCs and CSUs, to make sure that any class that can be tagged for a CTE or a deemed as like a dual enrollment type of class, something like that, is tagged correctly so that we get credit for that, because those are some of the ways students get deemed college and career ready. And then we also want to look at, are there other CTE courses out there that we could offer that may be more accessible, because we have a lot of amazing CTE courses at our high school, engineering, medical careers paths, so they have some real high academic rigor. And not that we want classes with low academic rigor, but there may be some that may be more accessible for some students, like such as hospitality or something along those lines. So we're looking at that. And then on the behavior side, we're meeting with our administrators and our director of student services to really look at what are the requirements around behavior, other means of correction besides suspension. When do we use suspension? What else do we need to do so that we can educate students and be proactive? One group that we have not gotten flagged for, but that we are paying attention to, because it is a new student group that the state is monitoring, are called long-term English learners. And those are students that have been with us as English learners for 7 years or more and haven't mastered the LCAP test yet to be reclassified as English fluent. And so they are struggling, and we're watching where we are in that data monitoring to make sure that we don't end up in a accountability measure for them as well.
Thanks.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
And we are on to 12D. Ms. Barrington, you are up.
So good evening. This is the point in our budget development annual cycle where the district brings forth its initial projections for enrollment for the next year. So what you have before you is a historic document that you have seen each year that has been updated for what we believe our enrollment is likely to look like in the 25-26 year. So to get to these projections, each grade level, starting with our current kindergartners, was moved up to the next grade. So kindergarten was moved to first to second, and our 12th graders that are graduating out of the calculation. That then leaves us with the incoming TK and the incoming kindergarten, which is the hardest group to project and predict. So we took a conservative approach at this time until it's known more how our enrollment is going, and enrollment for next year just started this past Saturday. We're projecting as conservative as we can since it drives our funding. This will be updated. We will bring it back to you. It won't only be annual. I will have conversations with Dr. Wright over the next few months as we progress in our development of the budget for next year to update the board on how our enrollment looks. At this time, because our lower kindergarten class will continue to go through each year, we are projecting that we will continue to decline in enrollment, potentially up to another 52 students lower than we are currently.
So when I first looked at this, I looked at like K through 5, we're down 60 students. When I read that, I thought 60 students left, but that's not necessarily accurate. It's because you're rolling over. So if we're not bringing in new students into kindergarten or TK, then we're not realizing, then we're effectively losing students just because we're not bringing them in because Benicia is built out and we don't have as many kids
Correct. And so, one aspect of our enrollment is that 15% of our students come from outside the boundaries of Benicia, which upwards of almost 600 of our overall kids are from outside. So what we did not do was assume we're going to get the same number of kids applying for IDAs at the TK and kindergarten level. So we will realize them when they're real, but we can't assume that there is another group of these students that will come and apply to be in our district. They may. The numbers moving from 5th to 6th could change. Our IDAs reapply. New may come in. From 8th to 9th, our IDAs reapply. New may come in. If it works within the practices that are done to review those IDAs. But at this time, from kindergarten through 12th, they were rolled up to the next level, and then we conservatively projected for kindergarten and our potential. The TK is adding the June, July, and August. That's the remaining band of months that are missing. So those are kids that will turn 4. So those kids are on the younger end.
Just a follow-up. I mentioned one potential reason why we have declining enrollment, which is, we don't have any new homes here. We're also, it's expensive to live here, so young families can't afford to move here. Are you looking at any other reasons why, do you have a sense for why enrollment is declining beyond those? Are you looking at that?
We've looked, those are the main reasons.
Okay.
We don't know of other reasons. This is a very desirable district to be in, as we see when we have the number of people that apply to come be in the district. But it really is the families that come, they stay and age out.
You know what would be nice for future reference on this list, going back to 11-12 through 24-25, then 25 through 26. I mean, the 25-26 projections right now, like you said, it's conservative projection. For me to be able to really read it, it would have been nice to have the CalPADS enrollment, then what the estimated enrollment was, and then what the actual enrollment was, to see trend-wise, did we generally underestimate, overestimate, or hit it? I don't even know if we have the old projections. But for me to be able to read it, just trend-wise, it'd be cool to be able to say, okay, well, when we estimate, we seem to be in the ballpark. Or when we estimate, it always ends up, because I remember 22, 23, we only got 8 more kids, but I remember Tim was estimating, a loss of like 80 or 90. Mm-hmm. So to know how it'd be cool if we could do that.
I can speak to what you saw as your projection a year ago for 24-25, thought it would be flat at the time of that projection. By the time it got to the budget being presented, there had been a lot of conversations about the increase in the number of months for TK, so a growth projection was used. As you can see, we actually have fewer students this year than we did last year.
Right.
But a lot of that has to do with rolling the grades and then trying to project how many kindergartners and TK students are going to come.
Do our kindergartners and TK students, do those families tend to stay in through high school? Or are we losing students at a particular grade level?
So at my level, I can see that the class of the kindergarten class, if it had 289, if it continued all the way down, I can say yes, they're staying. I think that would come more maybe from student services or on the ed side of the house. Are they the same 289 kids? That I don't know.
I don't know if this is on your side of the house.
I can try.
I'm curious to know if we have an idea of what the local areas enrollment rates are at like Vallejo, Martinez, Concord, and those public school districts. Is their enrollment also decreasing? And also curious to know the Benicia and Benicia area private schools, what their enrollment is looking like. are they having higher enrollment versus us having lower enrollment?
And we can pull that data and bring it back. I do know just in California in general, most districts, a lot of districts are in decline in enrollment because a lot of people are leaving the state because cost of homes in Benicia are expensive, but they're expensive everywhere in California, and many people are leaving the state.
Yeah, this might not, once again, be on your side of the house, but I'm curious to know what we're doing to talk about TK in the community and really encouraging our families and, you know, advocating for BUSD schools to be part of their thought process as they're thinking about where their children go.
Absolutely, I can talk a little bit about that. I know that we have enrollment happening right now, and we have an ad out in the newspaper. Our website has been updated to include that information. Our local preschools know, though there's a little tug of war because they want to keep their 4-year-olds as much as we want to get their 4-year-olds. We did put information about the difference between preschool and TK on our website so that families can make that choice. So those are some of the things that we've done, and we started talking about what else can we do to make sure that we get the word out. But I think a lot of people do know, and I think for the years when we came back from COVID, and we thought, if you remember, if you were on the board way back when, we thought by this point we would have 3 TKs at every grade level because it would be like another grade level, and they didn't come nearly as fast. And part of that, I think, was returning from COVID and getting all of that. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes now that they can be 4 by September 1st. And that just becomes the norm instead of this rolling month piece.
My last question is, I think it would be a good use of time to just talk with maybe some of our teachers, some of our principals, some of our admins in regards to maybe what their thoughts are about enrollment. You know, I know we talk a lot about the expense of California, et cetera, but there are a lot of people who are interested in moving here and interested in looking at Benicia. And so I think, you know, sometimes introspectively looking at ourselves to see if there are some ideas or some things that we can fix within ourselves to ensure that we are getting our community members here in BUSD. That's all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Barrigan, you're still up. Ms. Barrington, excuse me. So you're going to review the governor's January budget proposal for 25-26.
Yes. So on January 10th, Governor Newsom released his proposed budget for the 25-26 year. And then staff from Benicia attended the school services of California presentation on the budget and the budget language that they had the ability to review at that time on January 21st. More language has come out in some of the trailer bills. It hasn't necessarily changed what came out in the presentation. It's given some clarity and added some questions. Okay. All right. So different this year, the governor wasn't present for the release of his budget. There were fires in LA, and that is where he was. Also, he was attending a funeral. So that was the priority, and absolutely the right priority. The budget is not much different than last year, except that education, for the most part, is being funded on an ongoing basis, not a one-time basis. There was a lot of conversations about the maneuvers that were done last year to fund Prop 98, which is our majority of the funding. Those aren't present, but what is noticeable is there's still $1.6 billion that didn't make it into the 25-26 projections that have to do with the ongoing funding we would be entitled to. So that is one of the things we are watching, even in the trailer language. That's still noticeably missing. It's kind of an IOU, but not.
So they're not giving us our Prop 98.
Not all of it that we would be entitled to based on how Prop 98 is funded, because they suspended it for last year in 23-24 because they couldn't. So this year it's done with some withdrawals from the savings account and growth in the state. But Prop 98 is benched and then it's supposed to continue on. And so there's some makeup that has to technically occur. So we'll watch to see how that's addressed between now and the May revise.
What happens if they don't make it up?
They don't make it up.
Oh.
They eventually, like
Even 08, 09.
Yeah.
Eventually it all got made, it might just take
Yes.
time, there had to be borrowing. They always make it up, they owe.
Or they will change the funding formula, because the local control funding formula came into effect. Prior to that was revenue limits, so you can always change the mechanism too, which rebenches dollar amounts too. So it's one of the things we will definitely watch. Okay. This really just points out that it's ongoing money. The state has done better at replenishing what they borrowed from the set-aside account they have, and it's there for that purpose. You know, we can greatly appreciate Governor Brown doing that, so we're not sitting here if there's a massive decline in the state. There is some sort of protection to help the budget, and it is projected at this point to fully fund the COLA, which came out at the 2.43%. The greatest risk to the budget is what's locally done with the budget. Because of the one-time funding that is ending, that's really coming to the forefront, that kind of hid how the funding has been in the state, because there was such an infusion of funds that let a lot of things be done. Okay. So every year, the funding factors are updated, and you can see there's a base grant amount per ADA for the certain grade bands. There's an amount that the COLA would generate, changing the base grant for 25-26. There's the grade span adjustment, and then there's the supplemental, which all districts get, and the concentration, which you have to be above 55% of your unduplicated count, so we do not qualify for the concentration funding level there. And there is a proposal that's not written in as funded, but it is a proposal at this time to almost double the TK add-on to fund the staffing change that goes into effect next year, where it goes from 12-to-1 to 10-to-1. So TK has to be 10-to-1 adult with a 20 max in a classroom, and one of those adults must be the teacher, and then the other an adult that meets the qualifications. But it's not two teachers to a classroom, it's a teacher and an aide. But the cap is 20. It's not an average, it's 20. You go over or you're under in your staffing, there are massive penalties. It's not the same as the K3, where it's an average of the 24-to-1. So that number's in red because it's something we absolutely have to watch and be cognizant of whether or not it's built into the budgets. This is one of the slides that was included to just kind of talk about what's the real change been in LCFF. So you can see how much LCFF has been augmented starting in 22-23. There was the COLA and an augmentation, and then the kind of grade band is what really happened. So the governor will say COLA but then it really depends on how many kids there really are, how much truly gets funded out to districts. So this is just pointing out how much is brought forth and how much really is the increase that is seen in LCFF. So taking a look at last year, 8.22 was the COLA, but really LCFF went up by 6.33% statewide. Yes, this is. Yeah, this is not Benicia. This is statewide.
There's the difference, the declining enrollment statewide.
Yes, as well as the decline in actual attendance at school. So 8.22% means same kid 100% of the time. So you don't have the kids and you don't have the attendance, then there's a difference in what actually goes out. So you can see it's not really exactly known how 24-25 is going to hit because we're funded based on P2, which means attendance through April 15th. So after April 15th, we'll know how we did attendance-wise. Did we stay around 94%? Did we get closer to 95? And that's when you're actually determined if you're funded on your current year, your prior year or the 3-year average, whichever is greater. So it's being monitored all year long, but it's not locked in until April 15th when the year is almost over. Okay. So what does this really mean for Benicia at this point? So what this does is this takes a look at our projected enrollment. We're still assuming around 94.5%. We haven't seen our ADA jump any higher than that. And just comparing year to year and what that actual COLA looks like. So if it's same students 100% of the time, you should see the 2.43. Base to base, and there are add-ons in LCFF, so there's more funding than just this. It's at this time showing that it's not actually, for us, increasing by 2.43%. It's closer to the 2.38%. And at this time, there has been more and more coming out, even from the Legislative Analyst Office, that 2.43 might not be it. It could be lower. The governor could choose to fund it at 2.43, but COLA really could come in lower than the 2.43%. At this time last year, it was less than 1%, and it did increase. Similar conversation this year. Right now, it looks like it. There's still 2 more indicators to come in, and with the delay of taxes having to be paid for half of the state of California, we may not exactly know how COLA shakes out entirely for funding purposes in our state. But we will see. It may revise what is said and then what is adopted in the budget. This is just a few more factors that go into the budget and the budget planning. You can see the COLA that's projected for next year and the out years. Please take a look at how much higher those COLAs look right now. If you remember way back when, a few years back when you saw 24-25, it was close to 5%. Yeah. And you can see it came in at 1%. So we use the factors in our projections because they're the best known and they're the standard that are used, but know that in the out years, the revenue may not be that great. It is possible. And then for now, STRS is still at the 19.1%, and CalPERS is ever increasing. And for now, we'll know in April when they actually vote and can see how their investments are going. So those are the projections. The dartboard is what districts typically use to build your budget because it's a standard set and it's agreed upon. So it's not, I think CPI is going to be this. It would look towards the standard set. Some of the other things that were in the proposed governor's budget, and these are all proposed. The Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, that's not new. That's something that came out in 2022. And if you remember, the district received its full funding amount, and then the governor in the next year's budget said, I'm going to take some of it back. So he took some of it back. But there was information in the original law that it would then get funded in the future. And if it's funded or you still had some remaining, you get to do this great assessment in many categories for your LCAP and build in a goal. We had thought that we wouldn't be subject to that because we used our funding sources in sequential order. But little wrinkle, we don't know that we'll actually get the money, but we have to do the work. So Dr. Beatson and her staff will be doing the assessment, writing a goal, and we potentially could get the balance that would be due to us. If it's based exactly on when it was taken back, it's just over $300,000, and they would disperse it over 3 years. But they could change how they're dispersing it. So it's not quite known yet what we will or will not be entitled to.
Wait, so we have to write the goal. Do we have to do anything with the goal once it's written, if we don't get the funding?
My understanding is it's an action inside of a goal. That's all right. It's an action. I don't know the answer to that. Right now, I'm doing the needs assessment template that they've required.
So this is a proposed additional amount of money one time, that might be funded in the budget. This is another proposed one-time discretionary block grant that may make it into the final adopted state budget. At the time the slide was done, it said the allocation methodology is not yet specified. The trailer bill language said it might be distributed based on ADA percentage, and if that holds true and everyone is considered equal, it could be $327 per ADA. It's a lot of ifs. It's something we need to plan for, but not budget and do. Yes. And it would, again, be one-time funding. It's really, it disappeared. It's back. It's kind of the stopgap measure because everybody's really being hit with the one-time dollars are gone. And there's a lot of great programs and services that have been put into place. So this could help. They do have some priorities they'd like you to use it for, but it doesn't have those kind of restrictions on it. But it's not yet known if it will happen. There's also some proposed investments in literacy, and that has to do with the dyslexia screenings. It might get funded at this time. It's not guaranteed.
But we still have to do it.
Yes.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yes, sorry. I went past that really fast, but yes.
So we still have to do it, and
We have to
that's
do it.
something we have to be in, and that's starting in the fall?
Yes, we have to bring forward to you by June. The state has come out with a list of acceptable screeners for reading difficulty screeners. We have to choose one, so we're in the process of looking at them right now. We'll bring them to some staff to look at. And then we have to bring that to you for adoption by June with implementation in the fall for all K-3 students.
There are some with no cost, is that correct?
There is one with no cost.
No matter what, it's an unfunded mandate that may make it in the budget, but may not. Also, there's a proposed change to how ELOP, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, is funded. Right now, if you're unduplicated, a percentage is above 75%, there's a specific dollar amount you get, and everybody else below that gets a different dollar amount. They're proposing to change the bar to everybody who's 55% or higher gets that set amount, and then everybody else who's below 55% would get the balance of what is or is not left distributed. And so we would fall in the lower because we're below 55%. So at this time, there's no projected dollar amount to use to budget for the ELOP program. So this is the advice school services gave to all of the superintendents, CBOs, assistant supes of ed services, and HR in the room. The only thing you should budget for at this time is the projected COLA, because that's the one thing that is most likely will be funded at that level, more than likely. The other items, pay attention to what continues to come out, be ready for. They're one-time in nature for the most part, except ELOP, which we have to continue to do regardless of our funding. And then build those in if they're in the May revise, and then hold on and see if it makes it in the June 15th passed state budget. Are there any more questions that I might be able to answer?
You just mentioned June 15th, so my question is timeline.
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned there's like an adopted budget, and then it's budgeted and received. Is that fair to say that those are kind of like the categories?
So there's a governor's proposed budget in January.
Okay.
He gets to revise it by May 15th. And then he and the legislators get to adopt it by June 15th with a nice, lovely trailer bill afterwards that actually defines what they're really gonna do, and it goes into effect July 1st.
Got it.
We have to have a presented and adopted budget by June 30th.
Right.
Outside of what's actually occurring with the state budget.
Got it. And then received just sort of, it sounds like it just kind of fluctuates. I mean,
We get certain funding based on, our majority of our funding, the low control, comes in proportionate based on an advanced apportionment that looks at your prior year data, gives you your allocation up until the end of February. Then it's certified using current year P1 attendance, and then you're funded on that through June. But then your funding gets rebased based on your P2 attendance for your June allocation, which as long as everything's okay and you haven't been overfunded, you get the remaining balance. If it comes time, by June you've been overfunded, they take it back.
and P1 and P2, period 1, period 2?
Yes, sorry. So we collect attendance through December 30th, and we report it in January, through April 15th, and we report it in April. And that April 15th sets the actual funding. And then we do it again in July through the month of June, because there's a few things that are actually funded on annual, very few.
Okay, thank you.
And then you mentioned that sometimes the state will say, no, never mind, we're actually not going to give you that money. Do they do that, like, after we've already budgeted, right? And we're going along, and we're getting our allocations. Like, could they just decide not to fund a certain amount at any time after we've already?
Not after they adopt their budget.
Okay.
And that's why it's cautious of anything that's proposed as a new program or a want by the governor in January. If it's not very solid, you plan for it, but you don't hire and staff based on it, because it could come out in May, it could come out in the adopted budget in June, and you wouldn't be able to adjust your staffing for any additional monies.
Okay.
And then May 15th is usually pretty close to
Yes, yes.
They have to pass it, because thank goodness,
They don't-
lawmakers don't get paid.
They don't get paid, yes.
If they don't pass the budget.
And Mark is correct. It's normally, May indicates June, except in COVID, when they said they were gonna cut everybody's budget, and then thankfully didn't by the time they adopted it. Okay. You're welcome.
At this time, we're coming up to 9 o'clock. We have an hour, but is there anyone who would like to make a motion to extend the meeting past 9 o'clock if that happens?
I move that we extend the meeting past 9 o'clock if necessary.
I second.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. So now we come to 12F, Comprehensive Financial Outlook and Strategies for Fiscal Stability. So we have quite a few comments, and I'd like to start there. So Alexis,
Can I ask? Sure. Is it possible to go out of order, since this is gonna be the one we're gonna spend a lot of time on? Can we do the action items and then come back, or no? Because this is gonna be the one I think that's gonna take all the time. Or is that not allowed?
We'd have to take a vote to amend the agenda, but that normally is done at the beginning when
All right.
you approve the agenda.
we're gonna be here for a while, so I was wondering if it'd be easier just to get the other business out of the way, so that when we finish 12F, we're done.
so even though it's normally done at the beginning of a meeting, could we do it now anyway, or is it simply not allowed?
If it's a big deal, I don't
know.
wanna push it.
I would just say it does, I think it's.
Let it go.
I don't wanna push it, I was just curious if
Okay.
it was possible.
So we'll let it go. So
All right, let it go.
Alexis Harmer, you're up.
Hello and thank you. My name is Alexis Harmore and I work at Benicia Middle School in the library as a library tech. I'm here to talk to you a little about libraries, as my job and 1.5 of the elementary libraries are in the slides for the budget cuts. ALA, American Library Association, has a pamphlet that strong school libraries build strong students. There's 21 studies that they have listed where school libraries support student achievement and that reading scores follow library investments. So the more invest you put in your library, the better the reading scores are. Primarily, students come to my library with their classes. The teachers greatly prefer to bring all their classes in one day so it doesn't disrupt their instruction. I do book talks, and I know that the elementary librarians do story time, where our excitement for books and stories and characters may lead to students becoming more interested in reading, especially for those who don't like to read or may not have books at home. I know that my elementary school compatriots also, I've seen remnants of their STEAM activities that they run in their libraries. I wanted to share with you there are 7 benefits of reading, and listed among those are critical thinking, communication skills, concentration, empathy, literacy, self-discovery, and stress reduction. So here's are the things that's keeping me up lately at night. If my position and the elementary school librarian positions are cut, where are my students going to go before school? Where are they going to go during school? Where are they going to go at lunch? Where are they going to go after school, where I help run the Homework Help Club Monday through Thursday with the help of our National Junior Honor Society students who are very kind and want to help their fellow students. Where is the person going to be for interlibrary loans from our public libraries? How are we going to get books from the public libraries to our library? And where are the students with accommodations going to go when they need a quiet place to do testing? There's not a lot of places on our campus that provide that. I'd like to thank that Ms. Jackson, who is my compatriot at Homework Help Club. Without her, it wouldn't be what it is. She's a student teacher aide in SPED program. And I'd also like to thank my National Junior Honor Society students and my students who come on a daily basis. I'd also like you guys to think about the students who may only come with the class. They may only get a book when they come with their class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Wing, are you here? There you are. I know. Hi.
Well, good evening, Governing Board, Dr. Wright, and Cabinet members. I'm Sue Wing, as you know. I've been in the district since 2000, all at BMS, and I've been very involved as an employee on committees, as well as a parent on different committees. My daughters were both born and raised in Benicia, BHS grads, classes of 2011 and 12. Well, here we go. I've been around long enough to remember furlough days and the layoffs in 2011, which I had hours reduced at that time. So when you were elected to sit on our board, most likely you were hoping to never be part of a time like this. But here you are, getting ready to make a decision that will change the lives of everyone in the district. I see each of you. Trustee Zeta, you know the classified employee. Trustee Maselli and Grubbs, you know the class or the teacher. And Trustees Manassi and Hirsch, you know the parents and the students. And I have just said your names and humanized you to all who are listening. I have a request for you and all the cabinet members. Please see us. Do not say, it's the position, not the person. We already know it's the position, but each position has a real person with a name. We are all scared right now. We are all thinking, is it me? Is it my coworker who's become my best friend? Will I be bumped by another employee? Do I go on with my plans to buy the car, the house, or to take the trip? Our lives will be on hold. Understand the anger that may come your way is the grief we're feeling. And I just want to say I love my BUSD family, and I truly appreciate each and every one of you and the decisions you're going to be making. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Chad Pond.
My name is Chad Pound, and I've been at Liberty High School for quite a few years now. And I want to say, first of all, that I really appreciate the way Liberty has been accepted. It hasn't always been that way, and I love seeing my student here presenting to the board. I really appreciated that they were invited and participated in the state of the district. So thank you so much for including Liberty. It hasn't always been that way, and I certainly just really, it is important to us. It's important to them. I wanted to speak briefly about our campus supervisor position and specifically about our current member, Javier Martinez, who's been with us for over a decade now. And I do just want to make sure that it's clear that he's an important member of our community. He reaches some of those kids that when we always try to reach all of our students, but we just aren't always able to do so. And I think he has definitely helped many of our students graduate. So I just want to make sure that we understand his position. It goes beyond just making sure that we are safe, but he's also looking out for the students and the student interest. I've been at Liberty, like I said, for a long time. We've always had a campus supervisor. I would just want to make sure that we're reminded of who our students are. Our students have experienced a lot of trauma. They're here, they're at Liberty for a reason. They deal with anxiety, they deal with ADHD. And I would love to say that I'm such a great teacher that I can keep my students in the classroom all the time with my great lessons. It's not the case. Our students need to get up, they need to move, they need to get out in the hallways occasionally. And I want to make sure that we continue to have eyes on them when they are in the hallways. We need extra adults. I know it's hard. We've had more adults on our campus in the past than we have now. I know that we're going to be asked to do more with less in the upcoming year. But cutting our campus supervisor seems like it's a way to make the staff less safe and the students less safe. And I'm really going to advocate that we avoid that scenario. Thank you.
Lisa, sorry.
Hello. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I recognize many of you. Dr. Wright, Dr. Beatson, Dr. Jennings, the trustees, and of course, Ms. Scrubs, who was a great teacher for my children. I want to talk about the impact that elementary school libraries have on their students, on their teachers, and on the community as the whole. Sometimes I know we have to make cuts, but we play a really important role, not in just literacy, but we are a person that sees those students every week from TK all the way through 5th. There is no other role in a school like the librarian position. We make connections with every student. And because of that role, we're able to build relationships. We don't ask much of the student except for them to bring a book back. And even if that doesn't happen, we work it out. But it's a safe spot for them. It's a safe person because we don't ask that much of them. We encourage them to read. We encourage them to expand what they're thinking. We create a community where we read stories about different people and different holidays and cultures. We suggest books to students to encourage literacy growth. We visually create displays and bulletin boards that showcase all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion to help students feel seen and heard. I don't know how many times in both libraries that I've worked at, both at Matthew Turner and at Joe Henderson, libraries are the heart of the school. So when you take a librarian out or you lessen their hours, you're taking a part of your heart away. During our read aloud times, we create discussions for connections with classes that showcase stories and topics that classrooms just don't have the time for. We have a decomposing pumpkin at Joe Henderson, and that creates conversations every day of growth and hope and experiments, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. It's just that outside spot that kids can come and be curious. How can we create lifelong readers if we don't make libraries a priority. We also want to acknowledge that for some students, the school library is the only library they're able to make it to. Studies have shown that test scores go even higher when they have a full-time librarian. One thing I also want to talk about is that my daughter, Kate, actually all my kids, when I go out around town, people know me. Hi, Mrs. Sorry. Hi, Mrs. Sorry, because I'm seen, and they know I care about them. And I make these relationships mostly so I can get a book in their hand, because we all know what a book can do. It creates empathetic, curious human beings. And it's such an important time in elementary school. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brianna Marshall.
Good time to piggyback, as I am coming as the daughter of the former Joe Henderson librarian of 27 years. So good evening, board members. Budget cuts are always difficult. I understand it's super complex, and I acknowledge the challenging decisions you are going to have to make. I urge you to consider the lasting impact of the decisions on our students. I know you guys will. I trust you to do that. I'd like to speak specifically to the potential cuts to library services. Again, I admit I'm biased as the daughter of a librarian of 27 years. I've had many people, like Mrs. Sari said, come up to me and, oh my gosh, you're Mrs. Taylor's daughter, you're Mrs. Taylor's daughter, or if I'm with my mom, Mrs. Taylor. In fact, just at the beginning of the school year, I had a parent come up to me, and when she figured out that I was Mrs. Taylor's daughter, she said, oh my gosh, your mom is why I am a marine biologist, and your mom is why I went to Berkeley for marine biology. So librarians are very impactful just through their very presence and their guidance. Libraries, particularly at the elementary level, are invaluable resources. They provide a safe space for students to explore, engage, and discover their interests. They teach students to safely research, how to think critically, and how to utilize resources beyond the classroom. For some students, the library is their only access to books and educational materials outside of the classroom. By reducing or eliminating library services and librarians, we risk limiting an accessible resource. We risk impacting essential lifelong skills, or at the very least, burdening teachers with yet another responsibility. Respectfully, I ask the board to carefully consider the long-term impact on our students' education. It's my opinion that libraries are an essential service to our school community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma Petrowski.
Good evening. I'm the parent of 2 girls at Joe Henderson and a son at Benicia High School, and I'm here tonight to add my voice to those speaking in support of our school libraries. I want to start by all of us asking ourselves, in the absence of a librarian, who will aid our classroom teachers in finding appropriate resources for their curriculum? Librarians spend a great deal of their time learning how to research, how to find the information which teachers then teach. Librarians contribute to student achievement by collaborating with classroom teachers and providing them with resources to help plan and deliver instruction. Librarians pay careful attention to things like diversity, demographics, and the personal, individualized needs of the community they serve. This is especially critical at a time when young people, more than ever, need help steering through the overwhelming access to an unlimited amount of information. Librarians help our students safely navigate information and find appropriate material to engage them in reading and learning. Librarians spend their careers picking and choosing the right books for their communities, a population that is never stagnant but grows and changes. There are hundreds and hundreds of important, meaningful books, books that might make our children feel less lonely, give them hope, show them a new world. These books get chosen because a librarian somewhere thought of that one reluctant reader who needed just the right book to open her up to a lifetime of reading and learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board, trustees, Dr. Wright. I'm Kelly Hughes. I am a teacher at Joe Henderson Elementary School for the past 18 years, but this has been my home for my whole life. And I know the lasting impact that a teacher can have, but also what a great impact teachers outside of the regular classroom can have, like our librarians and our STEAM teachers, our colleagues that we rely on. We work together every day to serve our students. And so I'm also here tonight, just a few hours after returning from 4 days of outdoor science school with my 5th graders, because I am worried about the proposed cuts to our elementary libraries and our STEAM class. As an elementary school teacher, I see firsthand the incredible impact both have on our young students. Elementary school libraries foster a love of reading in our students, as we've heard, especially when you're lucky enough, like we are at Joe Henderson, to have an amazing librarian who you just heard from. Lisa goes above and beyond for her students, and if you've never seen her in action, I implore you to come and visit, and I promise you, your minds will be blown like ours are every week when we visit her. With the increasing demands and rigor of our classroom curriculum over the last few years, it has been difficult to find time to fit in reading for pleasure, which is what kind of reading kids love the most. So our weekly time in the library has become so special, almost sacred, and that's not exaggerating, to my 5th graders. During our visits, they not only have time to read whatever they want, but they get to be read to, which is huge, and participate in so many engaging literacy activities that pull in even our most reluctant readers. I honestly cannot imagine our school or any elementary school without a full-time school librarian. And similarly, how am I doing on time? Okay, so our elementary STEAM program is setting students up for success in the real world, in a world that's centered around technology and engineering. In this class, students are learning valuable life skills like problem solving, perseverance, critical thinking, and so much more. Some of our students are starting to discover that what they're learning in STEAM might be opening doors for them in their future beyond the classroom walls. They don't always see what they learn from me in my classroom can be applied to in the real world, even though I tell them they will need those times tables at some point. But because of our awesome STEAM teacher, Cheryl Lau, they can see how what they're learning with her can be applied in their everyday lives. And I will echo what others have said. I understand we're facing financial challenges and that you're being tasked with really difficult decisions, and I don't envy you. So I just hope that you will consider all that you're hearing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Chow.
Short but loud. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity and being transparent in sharing the budget cut and the reasoning. And one of the major reasoning is, one of the 3 reasoning listed was lower attendance. I hope earlier when we talk about the immigrants policy, that will help us address that to avoid any fears. So put that aside. And another one is talking about our lovely librarian. I'm a parent. As an adult volunteer in the school, parent volunteer, I guarantee you, first of all, we warm welcome, invite you to visit our Joe Henderson Library. It's really located in a hard location. If you open up the door from the office, when you set foot on it, Dr. Wright has been there. You automatically mute yourself, and you start sinking in with your mind and your soul, and start tipping. Wow, what are those kiddos doing? They experience something different from their classroom. We're allowed them to have in-depth thinking and research. Talk about Ruby Bridge. Each classroom spends some time learning about Ruby Bridge. But our librarians spend weeks studying about what book, what story, which one is appropriate for TK to 3, which one is more appropriate for our 4th and 5th grade. She's our consultant. So therefore, we have a very successful Ruby Bridge Walk to School event. Another, like Dr. Wright mentioned, in his childhood, the only role model for African American being showcased was just the athlete. Same thing, can you believe it? 2 years ago when the pamphlet from Scholastic, they only showcased African American athlete on their pamphlet to send home to the kids. Many parents are in awe. Right now, why so limited? However, our librarian on a Friday late afternoon, 4 o'clock, struggling in front of her desk, full pint of 30, 40 African American role model. She's struggling which one to pick to put on the wall so they can show the great role model for the kid, which is diverse and also impactful, giving back to the society. Can you tell? This is all outside of the classroom, but it's very in-depth. I'm very glad that our kids have such an exposure. It is really a great place. Come and visit her. Come and visit our library in Joe Henderson. You will see the impact that it can bring. Thank you for listening. And another one is, we're very curious, especially our site council, wondering how to qualify to be a Title I school. If any additional data need to be collected, our parent community can help to be the bridge to collect in order to eligible so that we can qualify for more funding. So that is another one. Anything that our parents can involve, we would love to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kashana Harmon Lee.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kashana. I've had 5 kids go through the BUSD district. The youngest one is currently at Robert Simple. I want to say thank you to President Grubbs and the rest of the trustees for giving me a moment to speak after it was time. Thank you, Dr. Wright, for your statement and your words. I know it means a lot to parents and students who are feeling scared and worried during these challenging times. Last week, I was contacted by 3 families regarding racial incidents at our Benicia High School, as well as at one of our elementary schools. These parents were distraught, one speaking to me through tears, because they were hurting not only for their own child, but also for the children who are being exposed to racial and derogatory words directed at our Asian community, and witnessing gestures like the Nazi salute and being told that it was just a game. As we approach spring break, I want to remind you that BUSD students used to participate in a racist and traumatic game for years, a game that resulted in 2 students being assaulted both verbally and physically. One was shot with a BB gun multiple times. This game was called La Migra, and it was played for many years labeled as simply a game. Community members are doing their part by putting on events such as Fiesta Primavera, which happened last year, and it was the first year that La Migra was not played. There is another Fiesta Primavera happening this year, Saturday, April 5th at the First Street Park. As things are happening around the world and around us, we have to make sure that those type of games are stopped and never have a chance to start again. We must stand firm as a community and be clear that we support all children, and all children deserve a safe place to learn and grow. There are still parents and students who feel like they do not have a voice, that their concerns do not matter, and we must be clear and stand firm that hate has no place here in BUSD. If we don't stand strong and united in our words and our actions, we risk allowing such behavior to persist. My goal as a parent has always been to raise children who do not have to recover from their childhood. That should be the BUSD goal as well, to educate children in a safe environment that they do not have to recover from as adults. These young humans are our future, and they deserve to be supported and protected by the adults around them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the comments. And Dr. Wright, we are at 12F, and you're up.
Good evening. Gosh, we've got some really good people in our organization and in our community, and this is tough. There's nothing easy about this. You hear Dr. Beatson talk about our test scores and the progress that we've made, and then you hear Ms. Barrington talk about the financial budget coming down from the state level, and it's complicated. Purpose of this presentation today is to have a public conversation about some proposals that we're thinking in order for us to gain financial stability within our district. These are things that we've been talking about for years. Even prior to me being here in 2020, talking about the one-time funding, and it has an expiration date, and those programs are gonna run out, to our first interim report that Ms. Barrington highlighted, a $2 million deficit spending, projected $3 million this year and projected an additional $2 million next year. I reiterated some of it at the State of the District event, highlighted some of that just to bring some awareness. But tonight, we felt compelled to have this conversation publicly so we're transparent and we can start discussing items towards making some difficult decisions. So that's why we're here today, and I'm going to tell you it's not an easy one, but it's a responsible conversation that we have to have. Any proposal that we put up, it's just initial draft, and any decision that our governing board has to make over the next month, trust me, it's not going to be an easy one. So we're going to approach this with compassion, empathy, and care, and I just hope that you guys understand that. I'm going to move through some of these slides. Ms. Barrington did an overview of the budget, and I don't feel there's a reason for us to reiterate some of that information. So I'm going to skip a couple of slides. I do want to highlight this slide. We talked about decline in enrollment. I mean, we lost 600 students in a course of 10 to 11 years. To put that in perspective, as we talk about the local control funding formula, you know, we don't like to put dollar signs to students, but we get a base grant. And if a student attends school every day, that number is anywhere between $10,000 and $12,000, depending on what grade level they're in. You multiply that by 600, and you can see the significant impact of declining enrollment and what it's doing to not just Benicia, but other school districts in our state. It's significant. We talked about our daily attendance, our average daily attendance. We've been highlighting that. Dr. John Novick, who's our Director of Student Services, has led campaigns over the last couple of years, and our school sites have adopted them. Our clerical staff in the front office are making phone calls, trying to get students to school and doing a great job. Just to give you an idea, prior to COVID, we're about 96% attendance rate. Just like all the other districts in the state, we took a dip to 92% after the pandemic, but some of our efforts were right up around 94, teetering 95%. So we are moving and trending in the right directions with our average daily attendance, keeping in mind that we're not funded for enrollment, we're funded because students show up to school. So out of that $10,000 base grant that we get, if students aren't coming to school, you start subtracting numbers from that. So it's very important that our students attend school, not only just for the financial aspect, but for the other aspects, the education, the social emotional wellness, and everything else we have to offer our students. And the third area that's really contributing to this deficit that we're experiencing is the unfunded mandates. And there's a lot of them, but I think the big one, the noticeable one, is special education. Special education services, the growing cost, the students needing these services is increasing not only in Benicia, but again, everywhere. And when IDEA was first adopted, the federal government said that they were going to contribute 40% of their budget to support special education. In California, to give you an idea, they provide about 8 to 10% support. So that requires districts to use their general fund to support students with disabilities. Now, we absolutely should. There are students, and like I said earlier, all means all. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just upset that the federal government isn't, I'm advocating for the federal government to fund special education at the level that they need to. So I bring that up, and those are three areas that are really, really impacting us right now. This slide should look familiar. I mean, we presented this at a couple of governing board meetings in the past, meetings when I have dessert with the superintendent. I've shared this slide. This is our one-time funding grants. So back in 2020 pandemic, California's school districts received more one-time funding than we've ever seen before to address some of the challenges that came with COVID. And typically, the rule of thumb is that you don't spend money on ongoing, one-time dollars on ongoing costs, things that eat. But there was so much money coming to school district, it really gave us opportunities to put in these programs to really move the needle and support kids. And if you look at the growth that we've had over the last couple of years, I'm hard pressed to say that things on this list didn't contribute to that, because they absolutely did. Downside to that is that those dollars expire, and in 2026 they're going to expire. And when we look at, we received $14 million since 2020. We strategically stretched those dollars out over several years to provide services for our students. And we shared earlier this year that we have enough funding to get us through this year and partially of next year. So we were looking at having to reduce about approximately, and I say approximately because things shift, nothing is ever absolute when you're talking about budget, but approximately $700,000 for prior to the 25-26 school year, next school year. And if you look at this list, these are the programs that are funded by one-time dollars. They're organized by our LCAP goals, sense of belonging. Those are our programs, literacy and humanities, STEAM, and also equity. And we're doing more than that, but these are the programs that are attached to the one-time dollars. So when we look at that reducing $700,000, those are the programs that we're looking at. Dr. Beatson, gosh, I want to say November, maybe it was October, November, we really started reaching out to our educational partners and getting feedback. There was surveys that were sent out, working with the LCAP committee, working with, talking with teachers, talking with students, talking with administrators, trying to get a sense on if we had to make reductions, what are those areas that we absolutely need to try to continue for another year. So we factored in all of that information, and we came with this proposal. So at Benicia Middle School, we have a 20% math coach that we fund through one-time funding. It's about $30,000. Absolutely did a great job. And this math coach, we had new curriculum, which was, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Thank you. CPM math curriculum, thank you. CPM math curriculum, and over a 2-year period, just really worked with the other math teachers at BMS to learn the curriculum and really just integrate that practice into Benicia Middle School. And it definitely moved the needle. I mean, if you look at BMS's test scores last year, you'll be amazed. But we feel that over a 2-year period of time, we have great math teachers at Benicia Middle School that we feel that they can carry that torch and continue the great work that they started over that 2-year period of time. TOSA, we have a lot of acronyms in education. Sorry, I should have wrote it out, but Teacher on Special Assignment. This particular Teacher on Special Assignment, through the one-time grants, we have elementary curriculum, new curriculum that we implemented this year. We're able to take a teacher to assist with professional development with our staff, and also produce some curriculum supports for our teachers that they can incorporate into their classrooms. We got a sense that we're going to be able to do this on a 1-year basis, and it is definitely serving as a great support for our teachers. But we feel like after this school year, our teachers will be pretty well versed in that new curriculum and ready to continue that great work. Combination classes. This was a result of COVID. Certainly, I'm going to sit here and say that our combination classes best practices, absolutely not, but they are pretty common in districts across probably the country, but I'll just say the state. Through the one-time dollars, we were able to have no combination classes. We currently are funding 2 teachers, no combo classes. We would have to take a look at that, and right now that's on our list for consideration. And then the final one that I want to talk about right now is a new teacher coach. We hired a lot of teachers last year when we had the retirement incentive, and we were able to fund a new teacher coach to provide some support to the incoming teachers to our district. Again, everything on this list is so important. But that's something that we would have to consider. And I say that because we haven't found another funding stream for those 4 areas that I just suggested. So in this proposal, that will be something that we would not be able to bring back next year. There's a couple of other items on this list. The first one is a library contract. So school districts were required to have a district librarian, and Benicia Unified, we don't have anyone with that credential, so we contract with the city of Benicia, and they serve as our librarian. That contract is $25,000. We understand that this is an ongoing cost. While we're able to fund it out of our one-time dollars over the last couple of years, this is something that we have to continue. So we have to figure out a way to move that contract into the general fund and keep that ongoing because it's required by law. Band and Liberty High School art contract. Those are 2 areas which we have some space in Prop 28 in which the voters provided funding for arts. We're able to move those 2 areas into Prop 28 funding, and we're able to do that because they're sitting in one-time funding. If those 2 areas were sitting in a general fund, we wouldn't have the flexibility to move it to Prop 28, but because it's being funded by one-time dollars, we're able to move that band contract and also the Liberty High art contract into the Prop 28 and continue those services. So if you look at the proposal up there, that's $715,000 if my math is correct. And that will enable us to continue. I'm going to go backwards. The remaining items on this list for 1 more year, but I have to be very clear. This sunsets at the end of next year. So at the end of next year, everything on this list goes away. And if you look at that list, I mean, we have some important programs on there. We're looking at wellness centers, extra supervision at the elementary schools particularly, Willie B. Atkins. I mean, there's a lot of, everything on there is important, but I just want to be clear, the $715,000 proposal is to get us through next year, and then after next year, everything on that list. We don't have a funding source for it. So either we find a funding source for it or it's a program that we're unable to offer. Any questions on the one-time funding? I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years regarding one-time funding.
When you say end of 26, does that mean June 30th, 2026?
June 30th, 2026, so I'm talking school year. Yes. Ms. Barrington, she highlighted the budget, so I'm just going to quickly go over this. This is our unrestricted fund. So when we're talking about our general fund, our unrestricted fund, when we started this school year, we had about $9.8 million beginning balance. We get our LCFF and other revenues, but predominantly our LCFF funding. We had $51.2 million. And then when you look at our expenditures, we had an expenditure of 43.7 and some change. And then when the contribution to the restricted, that's what we talked about, some of those unfunded mandates, particularly special education. Those are funds from the general fund that we have to put over to the restricted funds in order to support those programs. So, and if you look at it, we're operating or we're projecting at the end of the year to operate at a $3 million deficit. And if you look at 25, 26, and 26, 27, you're going to see a common theme. It's a 1.9 and a 1.3 deficit in the outer years. And these are projections. Things change. And I say this, that those projections are what they are if nothing changes, if our enrollment's exactly the same, if our average daily attendance is exactly the same. Ms. Barrington talked about the 2.43% COLA that's projected, that we'll know a little bit more in May. If that COLA, I know that talking about salary increases and reductions at the same presentation, it's a little problematic, but I do want to just say that if there's a conversation about any type of salary increases, then you have to take a look at that deficit, and it's just going to increase it because that's not factored in. And
This also doesn't factor in for 25, 26 any reduction in force or any cuts, right?
It does not. It does.
So, yeah, all the cuts we're talking about would chip away at those numbers.
That is correct. And And Trustee Maselli, again, these numbers show if nothing changed, if everything stays exactly the same. And we know with COLA, sometimes it goes up and down. Our enrollment goes up and down. So we're projecting a conservative enrollment amount next year. But if it comes in lower, then that deficit's gonna raise. But then again, we could get an influx of students on IDAs, then it changes accordingly. So as we say that nothing is ever absolute when you're talking about budget for those reasons. It's a lot of factors. You know, when we talked about addressing deficits, we often talk about cuts, but I just want to remind our community that we're also talking about strategies to generate revenue as well. Our attendance campaign, we highlighted that a bit ago with Dr. Ovick and our school sites, really encouraging students to attend school. I want to talk about the short-term independent study contracts that we're doing. Earlier this year, the state of California, they changed ed code. So if a student misses 1 day of school, we can do a short-term independent study contract to recoup that ADA if you're able to notify the school that they're going to be absent prior to the absence. And our school sites have done a phenomenal job. I'm trying to think off the top of my head how many ADA days. I want to say it's about 2,500, Dr. Ovick, is that about right? Just over 2,500 ADA days that we were able to recoup. And there's another 579 pending. So I know that our school sites, our front office, are doing a phenomenal job. I think we were walking through, where were we today? We were at Simple, and we were walking through the office and just eardropping on a conversation with the front office. Oh, they're going to be absent? I'm going to send you the short-term independent study contract. And it was automatic. Those little things, one at a time, make a big difference in the long run. So we're just going to continue that practice. I've publicly, in a couple of State of the District, I've had dessert with the superintendent meetings. We talked about reestablishing the Ed Foundation. There seems to be some interest there. We're just looking to create space so we can have that conversation. So we're probably looking at mid-March, April, to where we can sit down and really get this thing going. But those are long-term solutions because you've got to build an organization, and it's going to take a while to really start generating revenue. But we've got to start today for building for tomorrow. And the parcel tax. Planted some seeds about a potential parcel tax. We plan on surveying the community in the fall for a potential 2026 bid. So that's another avenue that we can generate revenue, but understanding that Benicia has some tax sensitivity. But at the same time, if we don't at least ask the question and check our community to see if this is something that they're willing to support, then the answer is always going to be no. So we're going to try. And if we get told no, then we'll figure something else out. But this is something that we need to try, in my opinion. We talked about, I know that staffing is on everyone's mind, but there's some other areas that we also need to consider. We need to do a review of our contracts between now and March 15th, every contract that we have in this district, to make sure that there are, just to identify if there's any areas that we could make some reductions and save some money. Dedicated substitutes. After COVID, it was very hard to secure substitutes. It was a bidding war amongst school districts. What we did was we placed a dedicated substitute at each campus so that we knew that you're safe. You've got one person that can cover a classroom or give you some support if needed, but that's also a very expensive option. So we need to take a look at that and potentially go back to the strategy that we used prior to the pandemic. Special education transportation, and governing board members, I know you might remember this conversation a couple of years ago. We pay $400,000 to transport a few students with disabilities. It's a very expensive model. And a couple of years ago, we were saying, well, why don't we bring this transportation in-house? But we really couldn't get traction. We've been working hard at this, and I know Steve Phillips, our Director of Special Education, Alfredo, our Director of Maintenance and Operations. We are currently looking at vans, and they're not the vans that we use right now at the high school, just the minivans, like a Dodge Caravan, 9-passenger vans, purchasing a couple of those and using our existing staff to transport students. I think when we looked at this a couple of years ago, finding the staff to do it or willing to do it, it was tough. But we've had a couple of folks approach us and said, hey, we're willing to do this. And it's a win-win if we're able to pull it off. It's a win financially because it's probably going to cut our sped transportation bill in half. So we'll be looking at $200,000 versus $400,000. And then it also gives our staff members who are part-time the opportunity to get additional hours that they can qualify for benefits, which is their motivation to do so. And why not reward people who've been serving our district for a number of years and giving them the opportunity to do that? So we're pretty close. You know, the holdup on this is we're waiting on the county, not the County Office of Education, but Solano County. They have a program in which they would give us some fleet pricing, and they'll also do the maintenance of those vans. So we're just waiting for them to get back in contact with us. So that's in motion. So you'll hear more about that pretty soon. Stipends, we have a number of stipends to support programs. We could take a look to see if there's any way we can reduce our stipends. I don't know. They're all important. Everything on this list is important. Travel and conferences. We're not a district that really attends a lot of conferences or does a lot of travel, but that's still a conversation that we need to put on the table and have to make sure that every conference or every professional development activity that we attend is absolutely essential. You know, we could do everything that I just mentioned under the revenue generation and expenditure reduction, but when 92% of your budget goes to staff, it's impossible to reduce your unrestricted budget by $2 million without looking at staff, unfortunately. So as we approach this, first thing that we did was said, have we budgeted for any positions that are currently not filled? And in looking at that, we were able to find $540,000, which means that if we do not refill these positions, it doesn't impact people. So if you look at the BHS College and Career Counseling Tech, that's been unfilled for the most part the entire year. District Safety Coordinator, that was something that remained in a budget because that transition happened early summer. We had an administrator that was paid additional $20,000 to do this after hours, to do the safety plans. That work was transferred to the Director of Student Services as part of his regular duties. So there's some savings there. We looked at some unfilled teaching positions at BHS and BMS, $450,000 at approximately, and I'm saying approximately to all these numbers at BHS, and about $30,000 at BMS. So that would give us a total of $540,000 of savings, which will not impact anybody currently in a position because these positions remain unfilled. We then tried to look at each classification and identify some areas in which we felt that while it's not ideal and it's going to be extremely difficult, but areas that we can reduce. So looking at management, we added a position in the business office, a management position in the district office, I think it was about 2 years ago, to help with attendance accounting. We included that as part of this proposal. Our school psychologists and occupational therapists, I know if you look at special ed, we understand that assessments are increasing, the needs are increasing, but we feel that if we reprioritize some of the priorities within their job duties, we'll still be able to offer a high level of service to our students by doing a 0.5 reduction in school psychologists and a 0.2 for the occupational therapists. And you're going to see Liberty High School principal 0.2. That's not a reduction of FTE. We are in declining enrollment. Liberty High School is also in declining enrollment, and it's very small. So if you look at our CDU program, it's our child care program. They do child care all the way through adult ed. And what we're proposing here is to take the adult ed portion of that program and shift it over to our Liberty High School principal, who would then oversee Liberty High School and adult education. And our CDU program they're generating their own revenue and they can sustain themselves through their program. And this model that we're proposing is probably where adult ed usually sits. If you look at most school districts, if they don't have a standalone program, they typically, that program usually sits with the alternative school. So that's our proposal, and that's about $305,000 estimated savings if you total just the management. We have another TOSA, or Teacher on Special Assignment, that's coming out of general fund. And this particular TOSA helps out with online data curriculum and also producing data and helping some of our teachers and staff members with analyzing data, and also with the online curriculum portion of it. That'd be $150,000 savings. You look at our certificated staff members, and by number is our largest volume of staff that we have in our district. We identified some potential savings. WASC coordinator, if you're wondering what WASC is our accreditation. So we have, there's a body that comes through, and it's for high schools. They will, basically they do a review of your school to make sure that you're doing what you say you're doing. And in that comes a very lengthy stakeholder engagement and report writing. So at Benicia High School, they have, they give a 20% release for someone to do that process, to essentially engage stakeholders and get data and write that report. Benicia High School and Liberty High School's WASC visit is this year. It's actually in a few weeks here. So on an off WASC year, there's not a need for that expense. We could probably give someone a stipend to collect data so it's ongoing, so they're not doing it all in one year. But because it's not a WASC year, because our WASC year is this year, we feel like that's something that we can propose. Looking at BHS teachers and BMS teachers, that has to do with decline in enrollment, right? It's about right-sizing our district. So if the enrollment numbers come in lower than they are this year, what we're projecting for next year, we believe that we can reduce a 2.0 at the high school and a 1.6 at Benicia Middle School, which would give us some cost savings by right-sizing our district. We're not proposing raising class sizes. We're just proposing staffing those classes to contract limit. Benicia High School athletic director and stipend. We have an athletic director that is a 40% release and also on a stipend. Looking at this in conversations with the high school, with the principal, we propose that we use an assistant principal or vice principal and put them into that athletic director role. We would actually work with their schedule so their work day starts, I don't know, somewhere about midday into the evening, so that their daily work schedule is overseeing the athletics, because we need a little more oversight, an administrator overseeing a lot of activities that are taking place on campus. And in doing so, there'd be a cost savings of $67,000. Adaptive PE and independent study, adaptive PE, just based on need, we believe that we can do a reduction of 20%. We currently have a staff member doing a 60% independent study. This isn't the short term, but this is just the independent students who choose full-term independent study. We believe that we can absorb that work amongst our existing staff, and there'd be some cost savings there. And on there, we have secondary counselor, a 2.0, 2 counselors. And we proposed that we looked at the ratios of counselors to students, and we're relatively low. I'm going to say at Benicia High School is probably about 335 to 1, I believe. And I think the state average is over 400 to 1. So there's an opportunity to have some cost savings there as well. If you look at the secondary certificated, it's over $1 million savings there proposed. And then elementary certificated, there's elementary prep, PE prep, and there's elementary STEAM prep. I'm going to put those two together. This year we have an MOU with our labor partners so we could offer additional prep time to our teachers. The proposal is to go back to what we offered prior to this school year, which would be a cost savings of $300,000. And then you'll see a 3.0 elementary teacher, as we talked about earlier with declining enrollment in our kindergarten classes and our enrollment at the elementary lower. Again, it's just right-sizing, staffing our classrooms to the contractual limit. And it's about $750,000 for certificated elementary. Looking at our classified positions, again with declining enrollment, looking at the secondary office staff, proposing a 1.5 reduction in FTE. We heard a lot of public comment about our library technicians, and the thought there was, can we continue a program, and maybe it's not every day, but we could still continue the program and offer a service, maybe not as often. Campus supervision, I think we've heard a little bit about campus supervision for Liberty High School. Again, declining enrollment and close proximity with the district office. So if additional support was needed, there are administrators here that could support. So that was the thought in including that as part of this proposal. And I want to end with special education, and I want to preface this with special education is growing. We know that, but we wanted to include this proposal for consideration. But in order for us to have a 2.0 reduction in special education, it would require moving students from different programs who could potentially qualify for another program. And I'm just going to be completely transparent. I don't know that this is a realistic ask, but again, we just wanted to put it on there for consideration because it's possible. I just want to just briefly touch on timeline. Again, I opened this presentation by saying that today we just wanted to introduce this public conversation because our timeline is relatively short. So between February 6th and February 20th, we would notify and meet with any staff members who are potentially impacted by the reduction of service. Because at the February 20th meeting, we would bring what we call the particular kinds of service, which is a resolution with employees identified who would potentially be impacted by the layoff. February 21st through March 14th, we would actually provide that written notice of a reduction or a layoff to that staff member because it has to be delivered by March 15th. And then between March 15th, and again, I just want to say that's just notice. That's just a notification of it, and I just want to make sure that that's clear. Between March 15th and May 15th, as a district, what we will do is that gives us an opportunity to take a look at our enrollment numbers, how many inter-district transfers are coming in, our master schedules are starting to come together, and then that gives us an opportunity to either determine the feasibility of finalizing that initial notice of layoff or even rescinding if we're able to, because the governor or the federal government said, here's a whole bunch of money that you can continue their programs, or our enrollment comes up. Factors change, and we're going to hope for the best, but we're going to monitor everything closely. We're going to be transparent in our communication, and we're going to approach this with as much care as we possibly can because this is difficult for everybody. And I just wanted an opportunity for the governing board to ask any questions or engage in discussion.
I want to say thank you to our guests that came tonight and said, provided us comments. It's really helpful, as we consider all the options. And I want to encourage, people in the audience as well as people watching online that, to reach out and to come and, send us emails, come to the meetings, share your viewpoint. I think it's really nice that we hear what the broad community is feeling and thinking and wanting. So just want to say thank you.
I have a couple questions. How many occupational therapists do we have in the district?
We have one full-time occupational therapist. One,
For one,
yes.
for all the schools.
Yes. They have a caseload of less than 15 students for occupational therapy.
For the whole district? And the district adaptive PE?
There's a .4 FTE equivalent, district adaptive PE teacher.
So I'm wondering, though, how do we service those IEPs that require OT or adaptive PE when they're being decreased?
In consultation with Steve Phillips, the special education director, he has reviewed the caseloads, the minutes that are required, and then determined that this is a reduction, that we can still meet the needs of the students, even with these potential reductions.
Okay. I have some concerns about that, but I really wanted to look at special ed as well, because in your presentation, Dr. Beatson, special ed is the ITS? ATS, and yet we're talking about cutting 2 full-time positions. So I wonder how will that work? Because if we're in ATS and we want to bring those up, and yet we're cutting staff, how
When we initially looked at it, it was an area that it could actually be done by moving students, but it would be very disruptive. So as I presented it tonight, I presented it with the caveat that this probably isn't very likely or feasible.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Just while we were on special ed, if I could jump in. I know everybody probably has questions. One thing that I hear a lot in the community is that we actually don't have enough certificated special ed teachers. And I think I need clarity, and this may be a later discussion, especially if this might not happen, as to what a certificated special ed teacher does as opposed to an aide. Because from what I hear, the certificated teacher is the one who can see the IEP, can do certain tasks that an aide can't, and that we need more support from a certificated teacher for our programs as it is. That's anecdotal, it's from parents, but I wanted to just bring it up here. Sure.
Anybody else?
Yes. Can you explain to me so there's like 0.5, 0.2 with the estimated savings. So what does that mean? So I'm just going to use the occupational therapist as an example. So 0.2 is relevant to $40,000. Does the occupational therapist still stay as an employee working to equal that one full-time employee, or are they just being paid for $40,000 in their role?
They would, if they chose to, they would continue to, stay employed at the 0.8, which would be 1 less day a week. So a 0.2 is the equivalent of like 1 day. So they would work 1 day less.
Okay. And then the consideration, you have to be 0.5 to get benefits. Is that accurate?
The benefits are prorated. So if you work 0.6, 3 days a week, or the equivalent of 0.6 of an 8-hour day, then you would get your benefits you would get 60% of your benefit, of the benefits the district provides, and then you'd have to pay for the other part of that 40%, yeah.
Okay. But then if you're 1%, then you get the full.
If you're a 1.0, you're fully funded benefits up to the Kaiser Low.
Okay. Can you share a little bit? We've talked a lot about what's happening in the schools, and just to think about, have we considered the district office? Have we considered what sort of cutting we can do here in the district office?
We have, and we've considered all avenues, and there is some district office positions that are identified in this proposal. management, also some TOSA positions, or teacher on special assignment positions, particularly in ed services. I believe there were 3 that were identified there. The complications are, it's sheer numbers, right? I know when you look at the certificated numbers, there's a lot more certificated staff members than there are managers district-wide. And if you look at the district office, there's not very many folks here. We have, the question that I have fielded, it's, has a district office grown? And there was a time where the director of special education and the director of student services was the same person. Almost an impossible task to pull off. And what we found is that there was a lot of liability and litigation that we're still addressing. And we were able to separate those 2 positions out and do some restructuring. We also have an additional support in special education. We have a director of special education, and we have a coordinator that's also providing supports to the staff. I don't know if I said, is it coordinator?
It's a program specialist.
Oh, I'm sorry, program specialist.
That was
Okay,
last
I got the
week.
title wrong. So there is some support, but I want to keep in mind that a lot of the work that we're doing here at the district office is not just compliance, but it's also direct support to our school sites. And so as we look at the numbers at the district office and additional reductions, yeah, we've considered it, and I think that the proposal that we brought forward, I think that we've identified some areas that I think that we can continue to serve our community with our proposal.
One of the things that, that I wonder about is that the district office personnel are the highest paid in our district. So if it is not feasible to have a reduction in force in the district office, what about looking at salaries there? We could save some money by maybe reducing some of these high-paid positions.
I think that in times like this, everything is on the table. I will say that, and we did this study, and I think we shared it with the board, I believe it was last year, you can do comparisons to salaries in a district office to surrounding districts, and I think you're going to find that the managers in this district are significantly underpaid compared to the other districts. So to tell a manager that we're going to reduce your pay because you make more than a certificated staff member, I think could be problematic. I think that you have to look at the number of days that our managers are working and look at the per diem. And then I think that you would see that there's a little bit more, it's a little bit more comparable than it seems.
I think that, I think it's something that, to look at, because we're looking at, we are looking at such reductions. So I think that, I do think it's important that we are cutting very close to the kids in this proposal. So I just wanted to put a bug in your ear on that, because I think it could be reasonable to consider that.
Well, we'll absolutely look at it. And I do want to reiterate that, again, as we're talking about the reductions in our proposal, we're proposing working to contract within the confines of the contract. We're not proposing that we come back to the table and raise class sizes. We're proposing that we staff our classrooms to contract language. Because if you look at the class sizes that we currently have, they're relatively low here in Benicia.
I do agree with Trustee Grubbs that any cuts should be made as far away from the kids as possible, for sure. And I mean, I totally understand where you're going with the management salaries, and I get it. I also just want to add the caveat that, how can I put this? Sometimes you get what you pay for, so I just want to make sure that we're able to retain good people if we do look at that as well. So that would be my concern with it. Would we lose people, and then will the rest of the school community suffer because we have a weak person, that can be terrible for anybody who's worked for a bad manager, as many of us have. I also wanted to bring up the library. You know, as I was listening to the feedback tonight and just in the conversations I've had over the last week, one thing has jumped out at me, and that is our social emotional goals in our strategic plan with our literacy, with our ELA being number one. And I think about my own kids reading books on laptops, which I personally really hate. I love having a hard copy book. I think that the kids learn better when they have a hard copy book. And right now at school, that's where they get their hard copy books, is in the library. You know, I've got 2 kids. I can tell you that they use the library and they get a lot out of it. They read books that I don't know if they would have ever read, because I don't know about these books. And it's opened up a lot of conversations in our house, and it's been really valuable. So, you know, I'm very hesitant on the library proposals. At this point, given that we may be losing our wellness centers, I'm concerned about that. I feel like maybe the library may meet some of those needs. Kids go there during lunch, I know they do. They go and they sit and they have a nice quiet place to go with their friends, they play their video games. You know, and I think it's just really important to keep in mind our strategic goals, and which number one is ELA.
Yeah, I agree with Trustee Hirsch in that, and, you know, libraries provide a safe space, and especially as, you know, we review that the one-time funding of cutting the wellness centers, you know, that's a safe space for a lot of students, and I think it provides students to think freely and to sort of like kind of have a brain break a little bit and think about things that they want to think about and things that they want to research and people that they want to learn about. So I especially, you know, when you think about elementary schools, that is like, as people were saying, like the heartbeat of the schools. And I know in middle school, a lot of students, you know, go there and they, you know, utilize books, but it's also, I think, having that transition from the elementary school to the middle school to understand what libraries are and what the functions are. Then as they progress into high school and then as they progress into college or the real world, libraries shift and libraries change in what you use and how you use them. And I think it's really important, particularly, you know, in 2025, that we're advocating that our, you know, students have free thought and critical thinking. I think libraries really support those activities.
I just want to piggyback on that. You already know how I feel. And this has been a very difficult evening for me, because I also believe, like you said, that it is an integral part of a student's life at school. I mean, they learn the Dewey Decimal System. They learn where certain books are cataloged. They learn all these different things, like some of the folks said, that shared information with us. It is, I'm having a hard time with that one.
I think it's a really good point about the correlation between wellness centers and libraries, because kids do go into the library to feel safe and to feel at peace. Libraries are very peaceful, and if we're taking the wellness centers away, which I understand, the libraries can pick that up. I hate to see libraries being closed, although in my years as a teacher, we have gone through times where the libraries were not open, and it was really a shame because kids do go in. Not just what they learn about how to use a library, which is so important, and which they learn that at the elementary level. So.
And I would assume, you know, I can speak, I've seen it at Joe Henderson, like, that's also a time for the teacher. Although the teachers are there, it's kind of a time for them to step back a little bit, you know, and let somebody else guide the students, and I think I just read a study about, you know, one of the important things for adolescent development is to ensure that there's adults that they trust And that's a really important relationships. And obviously, we talk a lot about teachers, but librarians are right there with the students.
So we're not making an actual decision tonight. I mean, I don't know if we want to, it is 9:30. I mean, I don't know about you, but I got to.
No, there's no decisions made tonight. We're just presenting information and having a discussion, and this is something that we'll bring back at the February 20th meeting.
Sorry, I have another question.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I did too.
Go ahead, Amy.
On the Liberty, it says secondary campus supervision. Is there another campus supervisor? Why is it secondary?
Secondary level, yeah.
Oh, okay. And then is that position 0.725 currently? Oh, okay. How many hours a day are the kids at Liberty on campus? I don't really have an understanding of their schedule.
I think
8 till 1?
to about 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay, almost a full day, okay.
8:30 to 1.
And do they all come to campus? Not all of them.
Everybody's
Not
looking
all
at
the
you.
time. I don't know. Anybody? Anybody?
What was your question?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, how the attendance, because I know a lot of our Liberty students are on independent study, and no, they're not. They do go to class. Okay. They should go to class. They should. They are expected to go to class.
On that note, have we reached out and consulted with all of our principals about these suggestions and recommendations?
Absolutely, we got their input every step of the way.
Great.
Are there any other questions?
No.
So we'll go to 13A, consideration and approval of the comprehensive site and district safety plan. Dr. Ovick, you are up.
All right, as the presentation is getting logged in, I want to say good evening, Board of Trustees, President Grubbs, Dr. Wright, and the Executive Cabinet. Thank you for having me this evening. My name's Dr. John Ovick. I'm the Director of Student Services and also oversee our safety plans. Okay.
To the link.
All right, I was going to say when I promoted from kindergarten, I had to say what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I was a comedian and a donut maker. So I could have tried some of my material had we had some more time, but lucky for you, we didn't. My 7th graders for several years had to endure it, and my kids do now. All right, so we can go to, yes. So the reason I'm here this evening is by March 1st, we need to provide our comprehensive school site safety plans to the county office, and it needs approval from our school site councils. It was developed by our safety teams and then approved by the school board. Wanted to start with some annual updates that are made to the safety plan. The school safety data is updated every year. That looks at ed code violations that are reported to CalPADS, and also our local referral rates, what's being referred for minors and majors, and the safety plan then comes up with an action plan for the following year based on those statistics. The site needs to update the approvals and records of review. That would be the safety team members on it that include parents, certificated staff members, classified, and also site administration. They would make any updates to evacuation maps and diagrams if needed. They would add any information to the site-specific procedures and information. That would be, again, the team there, and do a final proofread before it is submitted. So this year, the most notable change, there was one. Beginning July 1st, 2025, schools must implement an instructional continuity plan for emergencies that disrupt in-person learning. The plan must include establish two-way communication with students and families within 5 days to address academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs. Provide access to in-person or remote instruction within 10 instructional days, which may include temporary reassignment to another educational institution. And finally, encourage maintaining instructional standards equivalent to the independent study programs. So working with integrated services, ed services specifically, we developed this plan that's now part of each of our safety plans. First, two-way communication. Communication methods include email and Parent Square to connect with students and families. BUSD will use electronic surveys to identify student need, including the need for technology. 2, support for social, emotional, and mental health needs. Virtual wellness centers will be available, scheduled to be determined. Staff will offer virtual office hours for additional support. Families will be informed of these services by email, Parent Square, as well as on district and site websites. And for the instructional plan, core curriculum will focus on essential standards. Instruction will be delivered using Google Meet for synchronous learning and Google Classroom as the learning management system for asynchronous activities. Students in need of district technology will complete an electronic survey to notify the school site. Outreach will occur from school staff if the survey is not completed. Small group interventions will be provided for elementary students based on local data. English language development, ELD services, will continue virtually. And that wraps up my presentation.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Ovid.
Thank you.
And Dr. Oh,
It's
sorry.
action. Is this an action item?
Yes, it is an action item.
I'll make a motion that we, I'll move that we approve the site and district safety plans as presented.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And now we'll go on to 13B, consideration and approval of resolution number 24-25-23, the release of temporary certificated employees. And Dr. Jennings, you are on.
Good evening, President Grubbs, Board Trustees, and Dr. Wright. The item before you is the annual resolution to release employees who are on temporary contracts. They would be released at the end of the school year, and these are employees who came on board at the beginning of the year, signed temporary contracts to backfill for either teachers on special assignment, who are part of our dedicated subs, or who are filling, have done an additional .2 this school year to make our master schedule work at the middle school and high school.
Is there a motion to approve?
Can I ask some?
Oh, are there any questions?
Yeah, I have some
Sorry.
That's okay. So this does not affect our budget in any way? We've already accounted for these. This is done, okay. And I guess why are we doing this now and not waiting until we're closer to budgeting time and figuring out what we're doing with loss of personnel, et cetera?
We are required to release any temporary teachers first before we start any sort of possible layoff process. So this happens annually every year, typically in February, where you have to notify them by March 15th, but you want to notify them first before you start going into any type of seniority list.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Is it possible for us to wait until we have a clearer picture of what we're doing?
The teachers that, this reference are teachers who are backfilling for, like, the teachers on special assignment. So we know that those teachers would be going, if the proposal's adopted, that those teachers would be going back. So we would need to release them first, so.
They knew when they took the position it was a temporary position, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll not have a job somewhere in the district. But these temporary spots, they knew would be for this year. When you get hired for a temporary spot, you know it's just for that length of time.
And
Even
so,
in typical years, if we weren't going through this, we would still go through this process
Done this
and
every
release
year,
the temporary teachers, and then if we had space, we bring them back, usually during our hiring fair. But this is,
Temporary.
and we are required to to notify them early so that they know that, that their contract ends in June.
Their contract stands,
Yes.
essentially.
And then some of these are teachers who are current permanent employees who have an additional point too. They teach, instead of teaching 5 periods and having 1 period of prep, they actually teach 6 periods. So we're saying we're going to release them from the point 2 so they don't enter into next year with a 1.2 contract.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Okay. I move that we approve Resolution 24-25-23.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Our next board meeting will be Thursday, February 20th, 2025, and our meeting is adjourned.